think that we should have entrance music as preachers, like they do in pro wrestling.
That would be amazing. What would your song be if you before you preached? You know, like Stone Cold Steve Austin had the glass.
Can you imagine? That thing where you sometimes...
If you smell...
I'm just picturing, like, sometimes you'll jump up, like, when the worship team is doing something, and you just, like, you know, they're in the middle of the song, you just hear this breaking glass, like, oh!
the lights transition. That would be amazing. Smoke, like
the pyro shoots up.
If you had to pick, an intro song. Spencer Conway, our guest today.
Oh my goodness, you guys are putting me on the spot right away. Intro song.
This was not planned.
Preaching music. No. Let's go.
Man, and it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be like godly.
Yeah.
you just.
We're leaning into the pro wrestling side of the metaphor.
More pro wrestling than Kingdom of Heaven.
John Bellion, Kid Again. Are you familiar with that song?
No.
Are you familiar with John Bellion?
I don't know.
Never.
I don't think so, dude. You're way younger than us.
Well, go listen to John Bellion and listen to Kid Again. That would be my intro music. 100%.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
You are not young enough to be my son, assuming I was a godly guy in high school, but I think otherwise you probably could be. So I'm lost. Although my son listens to like Weezer and like I'm so proud of him. It's all like
I find my
late
kids
90s music.
Fairly open to like my music when I grew up too, because it was just better.
Lose yourself.
Oh, dan. Yeah, we're not going.
But I stay back until it kicks in. Right,
we're not
like just
going,
let the tension build.
Yeah, we're just going
good.
for sheer hype. We're not going for messaging necessarily.
Confession. I've listened to that song before I preached a few times.
Oh my goodness, no, I would never do that.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, my early days, I just like, man, I
gotta hype yourself up.
Yeah, just
I love it.
You know, you only get one shot. I
pray.
gotta. Well, I'm not saying as opposed to pray, but you know, you gotta
pray with it in the background. It's instrumental.
It's like it reminds me of the importance of the moment. I may only have one shot to share the gospel with these people.
Mom's spaghetti.
Yeah, do not miss your chance to sow.
I could get behind an instrumental version for sure.
Praying, I don't need Eminem. Yeah. That's the hard part about this little test we have going here is like all of these are going to hijack the actual holiness of the moment. So with that given, maybe
I listen to Chris Tomlin.
Maybe Black Betty.
Oh yeah, that's not a bad one.
It's just
I like it.
Just from a musical vibe standpoint. Yeah.
I like it.
If I did have to pick something that was more like edifying, it would probably be something from Maverick City.
Yeah,
that some of that kind of gospel flavor gets you hyped up.
For me, like legitimately, if it was like if I had to pick like one worship song to lead into preaching, it'd probably be like Agnus Dei.
Yeah,
that one just like opens the glory portal.
Well, I feel like it's one of those like when you just like when you lift your lyrics directly from what's going on in heaven, it's kind of hard to go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like if it's good enough for the 4 and 20 elders,
for forever and ever,
That's one of those songs that with the people who get like mad about repetition and where you're like, oh, buddy, I got horrible news for you when you get to heaven. Yeah, it's not all not every verse is a different phase of the incarnational ministry of it's just the same like 7 or 8 words on a loop.
And over.
Yeah, which does go to show Pentecostals are running the worship in heaven.
Come on, let's go. It should be no other way. Have you listened to Chandler Moore's album that came out in 2024? Because if you like Maverick
Maverick
you
City.
just said you like Maverick City. He's like the guy who put Mav City on the map.
I've heard one of their albums.
Okay, well, if you like Mav City and that gospel flair, you got to check out O Mema by Chandler Moore.
All right,
O Mema, it's great.
Like O Mama.
It's like an African I don't know what language it is, but it's like a term that has something to do with. Yes. Okay.
Seems like there's only a couple languages.
Somebody can fact check it for us, but
no, it's not that big.
It's a term that has to do with God's faithfulness. But
for the record, I know it's not a country.
That's cool.
It's a vibe.
I will check that. I will check that out. I don't know if we can play it because
copyright issues.
And
I think
Christians are touchy.
I think we should start playing.
Just see how
close like the algorithm's watching.
Let's call it the Icarus project.
Although I think
we'll see how close we can fly.
I think
to
it's
the
all
sun.
AI that tracks that stuff now, but I'd like to think it'd be a sign of like some sort of level of exposure when you get to the point that people are like, you can't be.
Yeah, hey, we got our first cease and desist.
I think as long as we sing a parody version of it after, you can get away with it. You can for what is it for either whatever like evaluation or parody, you can break copyright.
Okay, genuine question though. You bring that up. Have you ever made it onto a Heresy Hunters YouTube channel?
No.
Have you?
No.
Oh.
But I always used to joke.
Tell.
No. But I always used to joke like, oh yeah, that's how you know you made it.
I've been publicly called a cult leader many times.
Really?
Yeah. So I do feel like that's at least a notch in your belt.
Yeah. I've never been called a cult leader, but in high school, I had friends who said, AJ, I'm not really interested in the whole Jesus thing, but if you ever start a cult, let me know. Like, legitimately, I had a couple of friends. I was like, okay, that's a weird,
They did, there was back in like 2000, probably 15, the St. John newspaper did like a expose on King's Church.
Oh, wow.
And they had this picture of me in like a black T-shirt, and I was preaching, and like it was awful.
Did you look angry?
No, I didn't look angry, but like the whole thing was like projecting us as this like superficial, vain, it's just a rock show kind of thing. Which couldn't honestly, if you were part of our, like if you looked at our church from the outside in, yeah, we do technology and all that stuff, but like there's a lot of depth and substance. Like that's what we're after.
Totally.
And anyway, the funny thing is, was like this pastor with his designer clothes. And I got up on Sunday and I pointed out the picture and I was like, that's a Kirkland shirt.
This is a Kirkland shirt right here.
It was
right
that
now.
exact black Kirkland T-shirt
Totally.
I was wearing. So yeah, I got the designer Kirkland fall.
Have you ever heard of Frank
Fall
Magazine?
collection.
You would know Frank.
Oh yeah.
So
we've had a few exposés. I'm pretty sure in our time.
Yeah, I've been in Frank Mag. It's like a super tabloid. I don't know if this is true or not, but the lore is that every edition they actually incorporate a new company to publish it, like legally, so that they can never be sued. Like they incorporate, produce, release, and fold the company over and over. I think that's made up.
Amazing.
But that's the lore.
That's a hack.
There's like everybody uses fake names, all the
put them in the
reporters and stuff.
That's
not lore. Like they're literally legitimately silly names that they make up.
That's fun.
Wow. But yeah, they did one when we were starting Deepwater, and the big line. Well, first they found this picture from my Facebook that they used without permission of me petting my cat, like this evil villain kind of a thing.
Seriously?
Yeah, like they went on and then
gosh.
they the big thought they thought was hilarious question, because we met in a movie theater, was what was it? Like they were talking about, we checked into this. Was no word on whether you can get some nacho cheese to dip your communion wafers into.
Goodness, yeah. I've been burned by the media so many times. The last time they came here to do an interview, though, and I knew what they were fishing for. I think they were trying to go after some of our position on gender and sexuality and that kind of thing.
That's always.
So I actually, the guy came in and we sat down, and I was like, I'll do your interview, but I'm Facebook living it right now.
Oh, dude.
And so I popped it on, and like he started in, and then he wasn't doing it, because like
that's a good idea.
I was just trying to control what he says, because that's the thing I found is every time the church or myself have been in the newspaper, there's what was actually discussed, and then what they flipped to make it sound like it's like this is nothing what we talked about even.
I will say this. I mean, most of my time in Halifax, it's so funny. People talk about like, you go to these conferences, like, here's how you can get some news coverage. I'm like, I do not want news coverage.
Absolutely.
But we had once from the Chronicle Herald, a reporter came and wrote a story on us, and I legit felt not bad. I felt weird, because if you didn't know better, you would swear we had them write it. It was such a puff piece, and it wasn't intentional. I didn't know the reporter, but it was all this like, talking about how many young people come to our church and how it's so accessible.
Cool.
And it was one of those things you just sit back and you're like, if I had
that's amazing.
a PR department
and rare,
and I had them write a piece and just ask someone to publish it, I don't know that it would have been any better.
That's fantastic. That hasn't happened for us.
Yeah, that's the only time it happened for us, but.
Well,
credit where credit is due.
I want to get into it here today. So let's again, Spencer Conway is with us.
Yeah.
Super glad you could join us today, man. So he from Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Yep.
Pastor,
Lower Sackville.
Come on.
Pastor of one of my favorite churches in Atlantic, Canada, Rock Church. You're one of the pastors there.
Yep.
Super good to have you here, man. Just pro tip. Don't wait for us to stop talking. Just jump in.
Dive in.
Sounds good. I'm picking that up.
It's a free for all.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Which again, for our listeners, welcome back to the Dozens.
Yes, welcome back to the Dozens.
And the Dozens.
Yes. We've been getting some feedback from some of the Dozens lately.
At least dozens of feedback.
Yeah, about a dozen feedbacks. And it's been very encouraging because you've been talking about ways we can make things more focused, the ways we can keep things on track more, the ways we can kind of push towards a more clear kind of point of the podcast. And the fact that that is the feedback you are giving us demonstrates that we have accomplished what we wanted to do, which was to have a podcast without a lot of structure, without a real clear point. And so I realize some of you, like, that is stretching your brain, that the open-endedness, the off-the-railsness of it is the point. But I would say, if you're trying to understand what this is, first of all, go back and listen to the first episode because we explained it there. But also, this podcast is designed just to be a good hang. And I don't know about you, but when I hang out with my friends, we have even less of an agenda.
Which is what we're doing. Literally.
I remember somebody said it seems like you and Brent have been doing this together forever. And I said, yeah, we have. We just didn't have the cameras on before. Yeah. It's a good hang. That's part of it. It's meant to be very human. Like, it's not prepackaged. It's not sorted. Like, we're just being human dudes sitting here talking. And so I think, that's a helpful thing for you to keep it in mind. And we know it's not going to be for everybody.
Yeah.
But the folks we were hoping would really connect with this have been. And that's been really, really encouraging. And so if you go, man, this is really not for me, like, can I just, as one of your pastors, give you permission? Like,
or not a pastor, but I think to your point, I think it's the people who are maybe finding it hard to pinpoint what this is,
because it doesn't feel like everything else we do at Kings.
Well, normally when I hear Brent talk, he's getting to a very clear point, and then there's an altar call.
Right, exactly. There's not going to be an altar call.
No, so it's just disorienting, I think, for people.
And I get that, but let me also say too, like, this is not required listening.
Yeah,
like
as your pastor,
right?
Like,
if you're
it's not going to hurt our feelings.
If you're part of King's Church, you're going like, man, I'm finding this hard to find the 2 hours a week to sit through this like kind of freewheeling thing. It's like, that's okay.
Yeah,
you're like, yes, please come on Sunday.
Yeah,
yes, please be involved in the ministries of the church. You don't actually have to
King's
listen to
Academy. Listen to the sermons. I wish you would, like, if it came down to listening to the back corner or making sure you caught last week's sermon, do the sermon.
But for those who want to just hang out. For those who find it, like, and we have gotten this positive feedback a bunch, it's just encouraging to see a more human, kind of relatable side of your pastors, where we're not kind of where we're not having to push towards us, like we talked about originally, right? So often we're front and center with a very clear point that we have to feel we can speak kind of under the authority of Scripture to, and we have a tight timeline. This is the exact opposite of that. So if you're going, man, this is the exact opposite of everything I'm used to, exactly. That's the point.
And I would add, like, we're a fairly large church, and the access to, like, relationship with me, with you even, is limited. Yeah. There's just too many. So this, for me, like, from a pastoral standpoint, this is also a way to, like, I wish I could have, like, sit at a restaurant and just, shoot the crap with everybody. I can't. But this is a way, like, at least to give some entry level into just relationship. And
that's what I mean. The human side, like, who are we beyond just pastors?
That's really this is not like a entrepreneurship or leadership or even like discipleship podcast. It's a relationship podcast where we'll dive into that stuff. Obviously, that's what we're about. Like,
and I think there's like some healthy modeling that, like, how do we disagree, right? Because we'll do that. We'll sit here, 3 or 4 of us who work together in the same church and disagree with each other. We'll sit here, brothers, sisters in Christ, and have a different take on things. Or we'll talk about things that we're like, I don't even know what I think about this, right?
Or we'll talk about things that don't really matter, but we want to talk about it anyway.
Right. Like fun.
Such as
Crosby's molasses,
or our own official sponsors.
There we go.
Or what did Ron have for breakfast?
So what did you have for breakfast, Ron?
We got a song. Oh, baby. Is this rap?
Yo, hey Ron,
rap.
What you got in the skillet, son?
What you got in the skillet?
Oatmeal flex and rivals better run. Or is it bacon popping hotter than the sun? Hey,
that's us.
This might be my new take for my preaching entry music. You can totally see that the pyro goes up. Come out.
Wow.
I love it.
Not bad.
There you
not
go.
bad.
Yeah.
Rap.
AI rap.
That's certainly the upper half.
Dude, we'll answer the question. I got a scary thing about AI.
So it was my usual
All right.
Cheerios.
Nice.
Nothing exciting.
Honey
Multigrain
nut,
Cheerios.
or are you
nope,
still on the
I'm done with honey
multigrain?
nut.
Back to Honey Nut. Back to
you got to switch it up, Ron.
Back to his first love.
Multigrain. No, he's
multigrain.
back. He's still on the multigrain.
So AI.
Yeah.
So yesterday I had to film a sermon in the studio for like a broadcast, simulcast conference. And it has to be 15 minutes, pretty tight. And so I put my manuscript into ChatGPT and I said, could you format this for a teleprompter? And it did. It spit it back out and like made it just so it's easy to read. And then I said, based on the word count, how long will this take?
Yeah.
And I want to read I'll read you what my AI, what ChatGPT said back to me. This is creepy. It said,
I see you when you're sleeping.
Well, basically, so got it. If you speak around 200 words per minute, you're going to be about 12 minutes to deliver. Since you're a fast talker, just be mindful of key moments where a pause for emphasis could help drive home your points, especially with scripture and impactful statements.
Had you loaded some of your other sermon stuff into
I haven't done that. No, I have never done that.
So how does it know you're a fast talker?
I just said if I speak quickly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then it said, let me know if you need any other final tweaks. Otherwise, go crush it. Fire emoji. And then I go, thanks. And this is what got me. You're welcome. Go deliver that message with power and confidence, praying it impacts everyone who hears it. Blessings, brother.
That is wild, man.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's like masquerading as like a Christian brother. Anyway,
here's what this drives home to me. I've seen a few of these types of things. I have a friend who loaded a sermon in for feedback, and it gave it like a whole full sermon, and it gave it.
I've done that before.
Feedback on the speed, but like, hey, you should emphasize this point a little bit more, and you need another personal illustration. And it was good. Like it was weirdly good feedback, but like that ability for it to speak Christianese does drive home how much that is a cultural slang, not anything of any depth or meaning.
Yeah, that's right. Fair point.
Like it's just the language of a subculture.
Yep. Fair point.
And I think it's why that kind of that way of speaking, like Christianese, it just drives me up the wall because to me it does feel like a performative thing.
Speaking of the dozens, also we've had some requests for like merch, or like apparel, and so we're actively working on that. I know some people want some outfit gear that says one of the dozens, and so
we've got some live, right?
I think so. So we've got a website that's up.
Yep. Kingschurch.shop.
No, we'll go to backcornerpodcast.com.
Yes,
and then you should be able to follow links there, or you can get in the King's Church back door as well in the shop. But there's going to be
if you go to back corner, is it back corner podcast, Ron? Yep. Backcornerpodcast.com. You can see some more stuff there, including the link to the merch shop. You can get some sweet hats,
also
t-shirts, hoodies.
Contact us there. You got ideas, you got more feedback, whatever. Totally. Like you can fire it there. So
eventually we're going to start doing some stuff where we're like asking you to suggest like say topics for Conspiracy Corner or Tinfoil Hat Time or whatever, where we're getting your opinion on stuff, doing some polls, that kind of stuff. We may even someday get to the point where we potentially open the floodgate on the possibility of an advice column type thing.
Oh dear.
I've been pushing for that because I like to be able to tell people what they should do with their life without having to look them in the face while I do it.
Well, that's our first segment today. So
there we go.
But before we get to that, we're having a great time with nice. There's some of the nice. I love that Spaceman one. We are enjoying the feedback and the comments and all that. And actually, we got a listener sent in here in the St. John area, molasses cookies.
Beauty.
So
amazing.
One of the uses, I am going to break my carnivore diet for the sake of the dozens and give it a try.
I will say, as an avid listener, as one of the dozens, great job, everyone. It's very nice to have high quality Atlantic Canadian podcasts to listen to. It doesn't normally happen, so it's very fun.
Thank you. Hey, that's delicious.
Yeah, I don't know who sent these in, but these are delicious.
That is delicious.
We were talking before about like ways we know we've arrived.
I'm about to fall off the wagon.
I think the biggest way we'll know we're arrived is when we don't trust baked goods that have just been randomly mailed to us to eat. But for now, I'm pretty sure all the dozens are trustworthy.
Those are fantastic.
You can thank Kathleen for those.
Kathleen, thank you. Crosby's, thank you.
Kathleen.
Amazing. So now we have at least two uses for
Kathleen,
molasses.
you're clearly an avid baker because these are delicious. Could you please contact us and let us know how often you have to buy a new jug of molasses?
I've never done it. Yeah. That's amazing. So
I got this jug of molasses from my grandmother.
Speaking of giving unsolicited advice, we have a segment called "It Would Behoove You."
It would behoove you.
We're about to get behooved.
Very good.
Do you want to confess that you just learned what that word is?
I did.
To our Gen Z brethren over here.
Yeah, wasn't quite sure. I thought that you guys were referring to maybe like some obscure like 80s show or something like that. But behoove.
Yeah, we're still from the generation where people would actually come up with stuff, as opposed to just reference stuff.
I'm always happy to learn new terms. So behoove, is that how you pronounce it? Behoove?
Yeah,
Behoove.
maybe wrong. Can you look up a definition for behoove? But basically it would benefit.
It means to give a hoof to.
It would.
I'm in this weird
benefit
age
you.
category where both the people who are like a generation beneath me and the generation above me, there's still terminology that I'm learning on both sides.
Are you in the gap of Gen Z and millennial?
I'm at the top of Gen Z.
Yeah,
I mean, it
yeah.
depends on which kind of sociologist you go with, but I think 1997 is where a lot of people say Gen Z kind of starts. I was the generation that basically grew up with social media for the first time and like smartphones. So I think that's one of the key markers for Gen Z.
But it gives you an ability to sort of straddle. I was positioned that way. I'm what's called a zennial. So
Okay.
Between 1979 and 84, I think that pocket, you're technically a millennial, but you have you inherited a lot of Gen X.
Right.
That's what I am Gen X, but the tail end of Gen X.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those like, there are some ways in which I vibe a little more with millennial kind of stereotypes, but the darkness that is within me is very Gen X.
And that's how we differ a little bit.
There's enough angst in there.
I get you, but I can't go with you.
Well, yeah, it's because people expected you to become something. We were mostly just ignored and overlooked.
As far as millennial, I was told I could do whatever I put my mind to.
Gen X was more like, what's wrong with these kids? Yeah.
One of my favorite developments is Gen Z. They love to poke fun at millennials, which is hilarious.
It's so crazy. That was our thing.
Well, Gen Z totally hijacked it. One of the biggest things that I'm still trying to get over is like, have you heard about the sock thing?
What? No.
Gen Z thinks it's super cringy to wear ankle socks. Are either of you wearing ankle socks right now?
No-show socks?
Cringe.
Not just ankle socks.
Cringe.
But Costco, Puma, the Puma Costco.
Yes,
no,
you're
baby.
in, brother.
I'm so cool.
They're also abnormally afraid of feet, apparently. Like, that's another huge cringe factor.
They wear socks and sandals, man.
I don't like
know.
ankle socks. Not for any they tend to not stay up on me. Like the little low ones that just have a little band like just above your ankle, I'm cool with. But I wore those for years, but these I've just recently gotten back into the tall socks.
I would hazard to guess we've got a few demographic things we know now about the dozens. And of the dozens, about 70% of our listeners are like dudes between the age of like 25 and 55. The vast majority of our listeners, and that's kind of our target. Ladies, we're glad you're here too.
I think this needs to be our first poll. What height sock do you prefer?
Well, I'm just gonna go and say I bet you half of them are wearing these Puma Costco variety pack ankle socks that I'm wearing
your defense,
right now.
I do have a pack of. I think they're slightly higher than that, but at home.
Of course you do.
I'm trying to think what like my kids wear, and I do think they all wear like taller,
high socks.
higher socks.
Yeah, man, like last year before one conference, I bought my first pair of like wide leg pants because I had finally, like, it had been in style now for like a year or two.
You're like,
skinnies were out, and I was like, I'm looking down and I'm thinking like, these look so weird, but I've officially within the year now, I've made the psychological switch. Now where I wear anything other than like wide leg pants, I'm like, oh, these are so ugly.
It's so weird to see like styles, like now that I'm old enough, like my kids are embracing styles that were cool when I was their age. And they're like, Dad, they see a picture like, Dad, you dressed cool back then.
My son
awesome.
Isaac, my youngest, will not wear jeans. I don't think that's a generational thing. I think that's an Isaac thing.
Yeah.
But like, it's so funny. He was like, I need some pants. We'll go shopping. I'm like, what about these? Like, those are jeans. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I hate jeans. I won't wear jeans. And he will not wear jeans.
So it would behoove you.
He went straight from track pants to like chinos, skipped jeans altogether.
So it would behoove you to not wear ankle socks if you're trying to get in with Gen Z.
Yeah.
True.
What do you guys got? Let's go around the horn here. What did you bring anything today by way of advice? Something that would benefit? Did you get a definition?
Yep. Got a definition if you want it. So behoove, it is a duty or responsibility for someone to do something. It is incumbent upon.
Incumbent. There's the
there
word.
you go.
Yeah,
I
it would
like
be
it.
incumbent. Maybe behoove is. I have it more in the like it would benefit you.
Yeah.
Incumbent's a little more aggressive.
I would urge
than,
you.
Yeah,
It all
would be
just says it is
appropriate,
appropriate
be
or
good, be
suitable.
There we go.
There you
That's
go.
the one.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
that. I like that.
Okay.
So
I got a couple.
got a couple.
I got a fun one, and I got a more. This might actually benefit you in some way. One. I want to give a shout out to a YouTuber named Pask Makes. He's a fantastic. If it's one of those like he's a maker guy, but it's some makers on YouTube are great to learn from. Others, it's just an entertaining video to watch. So he's one of the ones like my wife will watch with me, even
It's
though
just fun.
Yeah, well, and it's just really interesting to watch his processes and stuff. He was a professional photographer before he became a YouTube guy, so he's really good with like lighting and angles and framing and all that. He's Australian, but he has the least annoying Australian accent ever. Like
I love Australian accents.
Oh, dude, I can't handle all the extra vowels.
Really? Oh, I love them.
It's instead of saying no, they go nay. You know, like that.
No, it's nigh.
No.
Nigh. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. No.
Nigh.
So, anyways, that and then on a more Pask Makes Pask Makes on a more potentially edifying level. Zondervan, Christian publisher, has a series of books called Counterpoints Bible Theology, and I've actually got the students in King's No God, King's Academy's No God theology
I've heard
class.
great feedback by the way for the theology class.
Oh, good, because I feel like we're like it's a slog but I'm going pretty deep.
I've had
with
a
them.
couple different people say it's been great.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
That's great. So like right now, the one I have them reading is about inerrancy, the inerrancy of Scripture. So how it works is basically a debate in book form.
Okay.
So you've got 5 scholars. They each present an argument, and then the other 4 respond to that argument.
Yep.
And just each guy gets a turn, and they respond. There's another one. I won't have the students reading this, but it'll inform one of our weeks of class greatly on atonement theory.
Oh, yeah.
So like Christus Victor versus penal substitution versus governmental model, all that kind of stuff. And so if there's an area of theology that you're going, man, I'd really like to get my head around this, and you know, sometimes it's a stretch to when a pastor goes. And some of the students in the class, I had to walk them through this. Like, they're like, which one of these do you believe? I was like, well, I'll tell you eventually, but that's not actually the point. Like, the point is to understand there is a discussion, there is a debate, and to hear that. And so, not that I'm an open-ended, nothing matters, but on some of the finer points of theology, there is a certain amount of like, there's a good case to be made for a few different positions, and it's helpful to hear those.
That's the case in the kingdom a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
You know,
and it's really helpful to like, I mean, there's not generally any completely wackadoodle, you know, like if there's a counterpoints on the Trinity, I don't think they have someone arguing that there's no such thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right,
that kind of thing.
right.
And so they're more like somewhere within orthodoxy. Most of the arguments, most of them, I would say. So anyways, just Zondervan
awesome.
is the person. Counterpoints Bible theology, super helpful stuff, and a great way to kind of get an understanding of a given area of theology, and not just here's what we teach or here's what this guy believes, but a kind of a broader understanding of what their options are, what the debate is, what the range is.
Yeah.
Last thing,
I
it
have
would
a
behoove
couple.
Catherine to send us some,
Yes.
some more molasses cookies.
What do you got?
I have a
Spencer?
couple. Okay, so this is secondhand from one of my youth leaders. They're on a John Mark Comer binge right now.
Okay.
So I'll credit this to John Mark Comer. So grayscale your phone.
Whoa.
Apparently, there's an accessibility tip.
Hold that up for our watchers.
You can put a grayscale on your display, and apparently it's supposed to minimize the blue light effects on your eyes,
Dude.
as well as make your phone, like, I don't know how it works psychologically, but I've had it on since the beginning of
Makes it
Lent.
less pushy?
It makes it less addictive. The colors aren't. I mean, obviously the colors aren't there.
I'm doing it too.
I can attest to it.
If you open an app, though, everything's gray.
It's an accessibility.
So your video.
So if you go into settings and if you go down to accessibility,
can I just point out how much what it says that we are all just assuming these instructions will help everyone because who doesn't use an iPhone? Sorry, green bubble people, you'll have to figure this out for yourself.
Oh wait, you don't use an iPhone?
No, we all do.
I do.
Oh yeah,
that's my point. But there's going to be listeners who.
Excuse me. Yes.
Sorry, Android people.
How dare you?
Display and text size within accessibility, and then if you just scroll down, go to color filters, and turn on grayscale. And it'll.
Right, I'm going to do it later. I'm going to.
And then
It'll take me longer than it take you because I'm 20 years older than you.
I had my youth leader walk me through it.
Done.
You got it. Let's go.
Wow.
I'm gonna play with that for a while.
Genuinely, I've been trying to like limit my social media use throughout Lent, and it actually works because it's not as engaging to look at. But the other thing, and this is for any new parents out there, everybody's got.
We're going to talk about new parents
for sure.
in a minute.
Everybody's got a different approach to phones, of course. We're trying to limit phones, obviously, because I think that's smart, to essentially just FaceTime with my mom and dad. They live in Florida. And one of the most annoying things that happens is you get your kid who's like a year and a half old on FaceTime. They're just flipping through the screen. They're hanging up. Like, it's so frustrating. There's an accessibility hack called guided touch that you can put on, which allows you to trace your screen and lock it in place.
So he can't mess up the call. And he can hold the...
Yes. And he can tap them and swipe them, and it doesn't do anything.
Look at this,
so tip to all you new parents out there.
New parenting. We were doing the...
I'm going to do that with my 19-year-old. I'm just kidding.
We were doing the DVDs on the back of the seat driving, right?
Totally,
bro. That was my era.
Our hack was put your seat just another couple inches forward and they won't be able to reach. Yeah. Boom, problem solved.
That's so good. Super helpful.
That's good, man. You brought some good stuff.
I'm telling you.
Super helpful.
That was really good.
I'm excited to see what this grayscale thing does.
All right, I got two things that will behoove you. One, a book recommendation based on some of the conversations we've been having in the last couple of episodes. We keep coming back to kind of unseen realm stuff. And I would just encourage people, this wouldn't be for everybody. Particularly a lot of our listening demographic, you're probably just not going to sit down with a 300-page book by Michael Heiser. But some of you, I think this would really behoove you to read Michael Heiser's book called The Unseen Realm.
Yeah.
It's a tough read at times, but man, the stuff that he unlocks in there about just the reality of the kingdom of heaven and how it intersects with earth. That really was a bit of a mind shifter for me. I had a too overly simplistic view of the heavens, the earth, the God, angels, demons.
Yeah.
That book is fantastic for that. So, Unseen Realm by Dr. Michael Heiser. I want to recommend that. It would behoove you to read that.
You want to take a stab at spelling his last name?
Heiser.
Oh, it's not that hard to spell.
I think. Or it might be Hie, but
something in there.
Somewhere, that's it, yeah.
And he's like a well-known enough guy. You'll get close.
You'll find him, yeah. If you type in Unseen Realm, that'll be the first thing that comes up. So, and then my second thing is just fun things for the sake of levity.
Yeah.
Just to do hobbies. Hobbies. Just something fun. Saw a video recently of some gentlemen playing darts. Do you have that video, Ron? For our listeners, just listen to the joy of something so stupid, of like throwing a metal object at a foam circle. Listen to the joy that a hobby can bring.
Got to find a breaker throw in this set if he wants to level up the World Championship final. Michael Van Gerwen isn't.
So good.
Crank it up.
He moves to give him a sniff.
Full edification on this one.
Yeah, the combination finishing in this game is going to be key. You can tell by the way they're scoring, there may be nothing in it. They may both be on lines. Michael may miss and Michael may hit. They're both on nines. They're both on a nine.
I love how nonchalant they are.
I love how repetitive, like...
Wow, the World Championship final. Michael Van Gerwen is a nine-darter in the World final and just misses double 12. Over to you, Michael Smith.
One man misses, does the other man get? I have never seen the like. Come
Let's go. Let's go. I love it.
I can't speak.
I've got one for you. If you are like me and you are only able to feel at most intermediate levels of joy, get you a friend like Brent, who is capable of deriving that much joy out of something that simple.
Oh man. Anyway,
no, I'm not critiquing you. No. I am happy for you.
I think to spiritualize this a little bit again. That's not. There's nothing necessarily godly about a half-drunken giant crowd of people freaking out about darts. But I think God is more fun than we think he is.
Totally.
I think there's something to be said about like just the joy of just having fun.
On that subject of hobbies, I think I shared this with a text thread that you and I are part of the other day, Brent, but there's a tweet I came across this week. It said, "It's sweet how Sauron wants to rule all creatures and bring darkness to all Middle-earth. But he also takes some time out of his wretched schedule to write a little poem and engrave it in some homemade jewelry. We all need a hobby." That's what I'm saying.
That's good.
Yeah. I'm gonna work my craft.
Time for arts and crafts.
Time for arts and crafts.
I'll conquer Middle Earth later, but first arts and crafts.
So I just want to affirm the hobbies, affirm the side, the fun.
Genuinely,
the
it's
fun.
important.
It is legitimately, especially if you're in ministry.
Yes.
I had some great advice by a pastor named Larry Osborne. And like one of the things I asked him was like, "How do you do this for decades?" And he was, "Get a hobby." It's like you have to have some kind of outlet that just it's not. There's nothing to it other than it's innately fun or
totally. And I think that's a trap that a lot of people, but especially pastors, fall into, is they think their hobby has to be overtly spiritual.
Yes.
What do you do for fun? I read books about theology.
Yeah.
It's like you might enjoy doing that, but I mean, what's the thing you do that isn't like it's not really a break from ministry if it's ministry, right? And so. There's also a danger of beginning to see your hobby as a break from being a Christian, which is not healthy.
Yeah.
But like what's the thing you do? I think also it's a great, like it gives you something in common with normal people.
Yeah.
Right? Like
as a minister,
Like exactly. as a pastor to be able to like, no, like I know you're super into basketball, Brent.
Yeah.
And so being able to talk basketball with civilians for
absolutely.
Like it makes you it's a human thing, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to if all you can do is go like, so what is your sermon prep process like, bro?
For me with that, there is a missional component of it too, where it's like if you're super involved in the church or you work at a church, you have to be quite intentional to build relationships with people who aren't Christians.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So hobbies also are a good avenue for just like meeting people who like God might want to reach through you.
And truthfully, the more like a lot of times Christians are criticized for not having a lot of unsaved friends. And I do think it's important that we do that. But there is if your whole life is centered around Jesus, it's really like you actually have a lot less in common with people who don't. So all the more reason to go, I need to intentionally foster something that can be some common ground, right? Because how I make my decisions, even if our morals seem to line up, the bases of our morals are different. Like we might have arrived at similar conclusions, but the root there was very different. So what's something that is just
common ground
that I can connect with people on? Yeah.
So hobbies would behoove you. All right, let's get into some more conversation. I wanted to do a couple keeper sweeps with you guys.
Okay, let's do it.
The official keeper sweep music. All right, here's the first one. First one is this. Last night was a blood moon.
Was it really?
Was that last night?
I think so. Or it's tonight.
That's why it was so red when I was driving up here today.
Yeah, it was a blood moon.
Okay.
So,
I'm still here. Just saying.
For those who don't know what I'm referring to, it's when the moon is like super red. And now, in Christian circles, particularly evangelical circles, particularly in the last 100 years, blood moons are one of several signs in the sky that trigger people talking end times. Is Jesus coming back? Probably, because there's a blood moon. Here's the question on keep or sweep. Should we keep or sweep using the weather and astrological signs as symbols of the last day? Keeping it or sweeping it? Think about it for a minute.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not as
I'm not.
easy as
I'm
you-
not comfortable with a hard sweep because I feel like there's a lot of I don't know the specific passages, but there's definitely reference to signs in the sky. But I would kind of look at just kind of what we define as the last days in general, because I'm pretty sure in Acts chapter 2, when Peter's quoting Joel, you know, that right there basically defines everything from that point on until present day as the last days. So to me, it's interesting. Like, I think it's fun to think about. It's fun to look at, but I don't know if it's something that we need to like freak out over.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess that's like
it's a non-take though.
I'm not taking it. I'm definitely not. I'm not embracing it as something to be hyper obsessed over.
Yeah.
I feel like generally I'm not too big on like majoring on the minors, and I think that's what happens a lot of the times with this type of stuff. Like, people get really excited.
So do you remember this time last year and there's that big eclipse? Did that hit Nova Scotia?
Yeah, it did.
Like, there was a full eclipse.
Yep.
And like there was so much internet chatter around the time about like, and they were mapping out the pathway of the way the eclipse was going, and they were like, if there was a popular video going around, one was like, it said like, 7 years ago there was an eclipse that went over all these towns named I forget what it was, Salem or whatever, and that this now it's going over towns named Destruction or something. Anyway, it was like this hot take that
next one's going to go over a bunch of towns named Springfield.
This is it, and like this does seem to keep recurring. Like, people,
I'm going hard sweep.
Hard sweep.
Right, definitively.
Why?
Let's go.
You are hard sweeping any signs in the sky as a tell.
As astrological events.
Yes, okay.
As signs in the sky. Within the context you defined it, as in things like blood moons. Point being, I think if it is an astrological event, meaning we can explain it with a basic understanding of astrology, and it's something that is predictable and that repeats over and over and over again, how is that? That'd be like saying every time it's Thursday, it's a sign of the times. Like, no, it's just Thursday every 7 days, right?
Yes.
And so I think if we start seeing things in the heavens that we can explain with a basic understanding of astrology, or astronomy more accurately, then that's, sure, I'll pay attention. Like, if the moon has turned red and we have no idea why, but if the moon has turned red right on schedule, like it's done on that same schedule from time immemorial,
it's like how God made it work.
Right. That's not a sign of anything other than the creator's creativity. Right?
This is getting a little tinfoil hatty, but have you guys seen the thing about the moon rusting?
No.
Oh yeah. Well, and actually, I mean, it lines up with the Bible because the Bible does say the moon will be red, like it will turn red. Like there's reference to that in Revelation. And you can Google it. You go down the deep nerdy dive here, but there's something that's causing the moon to gradually turn more brown rust. Like, it's happening, like in real. Yeah, very very interesting. Wow. Very interesting. So, did you also hear that the moon's hollow?
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
We'll do that conspiracy another day. That's actually one we should do. Legitimately.
I think. I think
it's not
another
hollow,
one of the things we gotta like wrestle with here too. It's a bigger question of how we interpret apocalyptic literature, right? Is the notion that like we go, man, the moon says the moon's going to turn to blood, so the moon looks red. It's like, well, actually, you are simultaneously, I think, taking a very literalistic interpretation and a very non-literal interpretation.
Yeah.
Because the moon looking red doesn't mean it's made of blood.
Right.
Yeah. So a very little interpretation is the moon actually ceases to be made up of the minerals it's made of and becomes made of blood.
Right.
And so if you're already opening the door to something that involves the moon and redness counts, well, I mean, that could be the result of some sort of war or other catastrophe that releases something into the atmosphere that causes the moon all the time for, months on end or whatever to have a reddish hue. Same way that, I always love when people see these super colorful sunsets and they go, look at the hand of the creator. And I'm like, actually, that's mostly pollution. Like all the colors, right? That's actually the sun reflecting off a bunch of stuff God never put in the atmosphere.
No.
But I'm a cynic. Did I mention I'm Gen X? But yeah, so I
to be fair to our Lord, he made a pretty incredible
I'm not saying he didn't do a great job. I'm just saying that's not the specific number of colors in a sunrise or sunset are not necessarily a reflection of what was in.
Anthony would just say that is God causing all things to come together for His good and glory.
I can buy that, but I'd put it in the same category.
I'm going to let you pollute my creation, and it's going to look better in the end.
I'll put it in the same category as like wars and famines.
Powerful.
Like God can bring good out of it. But no, anyway, I would say we need to be careful how literally we interpret apocalyptic literature. And I would say if we are going to interpret it literally, go all the way literal. And if you're not, then be open to the idea that the moon on a predictable schedule for reasons we can explain that constantly repeat. I mean, on the grand scale of time, constantly repeat. Yeah. Taking on a reddish hue probably is not a sign of the times.
A blood moon is not really an outlier. Right, it's not really a sign any more than a full moon is. Like it happens less, or a blue moon.
Yeah, I think the ability to predict it, is the dead. Like
right.
If there is going to be an astronomical phenomenon, or a phenomenon of something we witness in the skies, in the heavens, that I think is realistically something we could interpret as a sign of the times. We won't see Facebook posts about it a month in advance saying it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's just going to appear.
It'll be everyone will be standing out in their front backyard going, "Holy crap!"
Well, and that's the language that Jesus kind of gives us. Is like there's a readiness, like we need to be ready and on alert. And then there's a suddenness to it, though. It's like it's just going to break in like that.
I don't think end times prophecy in general is given so we will know what's going to happen.
No, Jesus said it wasn't.
Right. I think it's given so that when it's happening, we'll know that God is still in control.
Yeah.
That's
very different, though. That's very different. Like
radically different.
Knowing how it's going to come and when is very different than knowing it when it happens.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's the idea. So rather than us go, "Oh my word, the Lord didn't know this was going to happen, and I got to reshape my whole thing," we'll go, "Oh,
He told us
he knew this was happening. He's still in control."
That's right.
As opposed to being able to go like, "Oh yes, it will be in July 23rd of 2027. Such and such will happen."
Well, there's such traps in, and again, we don't need to get into a whole like dispensationalism conversation, but there are real ditches in if your like end times vision and your interpretation of like Revelation and Daniel, Matthew 24, if it causes you to be proud that you know something that the average person doesn't, that's a problem. Or B, like get into this sort of like self-preservation scarcity.
Yeah.
Where it's like, let's prep, get your pantries full.
It causes you to turn inward. You missed
turn inward. Like turning inward is the gateway to hell. Like that. No, it actually is. Like
I love the directness of it.
Well, no, truly.
No,
like,
I'm not arguing.
That's antichrist behavior.
Yeah.
Like you've been duped.
Right.
Yeah.
To like now you're actually going against the flow of the gospel, which is to like actually spend your life for the sake of others coming to know Jesus, that they would have eternal life.
Totally.
So I think it's just if your eschatology causes you to A, be puffed up, or B, be into this like save yourself.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not congruent with the gospel.
Truthfully, proud and inward, which are really two different sides of the same coin.
Thing, yes,
that's legitimately the original sin.
That is
of Lucifer himself, right?
That is humanism, and it is anti-kingdom.
So here's my completely heretical theory about end times in general.
Heretical, okay.
Well, I shouldn't say heretical. Certainly not.
It's a hot
orthodox.
take.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's fresh enough to be hot. I've thought this for a long time, but I wonder sometimes, like Jesus says, no one will know the day or the hour. And God is faithful to his word. Do you ever think someone's predicted it right and God's moved it just to... Like some guys, it's going to be on March 23rd, 1988. And God's like, not now, it ain't. Hold up, boys.
Yeah,
hold up.
God's like, it was.
Off your horses, four horsemen, famine, back to the stable. No, I'm going to give it another few decades just to spite that guy.
No, I don't think that. No, my God knows the one window that nobody thought of. So, yeah. That's funny.
The Father does. The Son doesn't.
That's a crazy thought too. Like
and again, it should humble us when people try to figure it out.
Yeah, and Jesus himself said the Son doesn't know
if Jesus
the hour.
If Jesus goes, beats me.
It's up to him.
Right? It's above my pay grade, right?
Why do you think people get so like caught on these things?
I really don't. The devil. No, true. I do think it's a distraction,
for sure.
honestly, and it's as some of the enemy's best. Some of his best tricks. It comes through maybe good intentions, or it's adjacent to like.
I think if the devil can
orthodoxy.
get you fixated on nailing down the timeline of the last book of the New Testament, to the extent that it stops you from sharing the message of the first 4 books of the New Testament, he's won.
Yeah. If he can get you to live in Revelation 6 through 19 instead of Acts 29,
Totally.
There we go.
He's got you.
Yeah, and I think there's a fear component too. I think people want to be prepared for something that seems like it's going to be chaotic.
Yeah.
And I think weirdly enough, it's in the sense it's a lack of faith.
Yeah.
I think it is. I do think the devil encourages. I'm not saying that like people who are fixated on the end times are somehow like under the devil's control.
No.
But I think
we're all under his influence.
Right.
Though.
I think he's very happy for people to get sidetracked on non-essentials like that.
Yeah.
And I do think there's to what you were saying, Brent, about being puffed up. Like there's a certain note, like I get to be part of a secret, like a little cadre of people who figured this out. And there's kind of an elitist tendency in it.
We know, and no one else does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's do our second one. That's good. I'm going to queue up Spencer first on this one.
Okay.
So
let's go.
Let me read it. So keep or sweep number 2. Oh, I didn't actually give my
I was
official.
just going to say, are you
Sorry.
keeping or sweeping?
I'm going to do a soft sweep. Soft sweep in that I do like we should just be alert and aware, but let's chill out on the blood moons. I'm going to say that. So let's live Acts 29. Let's live it out and let's get busy. The harvest is plentiful. The workers are few. We are here on purpose right now. If
Amen.
God wanted to come back and save us all right this second, he would, but he hasn't. And that's for a reason. Because there are people that he's trying to reach through our lives. We aren't here to save ourselves. We're here to lose ourselves.
Amen.
Amen.
He's not slow as
I'll keep that
as
one.
Some people measure slowness, right? He's giving time for more people to repent.
Absolutely. All right, here's this one. This one I'm actually very excited to talk to you about, Spencer.
Oh,
Because
boy.
you're a little more with the times. You're younger than we are. So, keeper suite number 2. Kanye West has recently announced that he is launching Sunday service again.
What? I didn't know that.
I knew this and you didn't. That's amazing.
Wow.
Perhaps signaling
dear.
a return to Christian Kanye, even though like I think he just paraded his wife around naked at the Grammys and like is
He's
doing
getting into tons of, like,
anti-Semitic stuff
anti-Semitism.
as of 2 weeks ago. But as of a couple days ago,
He's going to be heartbroken when he learns Jesus is Jewish.
yeah, he is.
It's really going to mess with him.
Yeah. So he's signaling a return to Christian Kanye. The last time Kanye went Christian, he was platformed and celebrated, only to turn around and leave that phase behind and go in the full opposite directions, leaving a lot of Christians probably regretting how much influence was handed over to him during his Christian stint.
Right.
This has happened many times with celebrities, Justin Bieber, Kevin Durant, etc., etc. Churches, Christians, and church leaders have a history of platforming celebrities who are new in their faith. The argument is use their influence. The argument against it is holding them up as examples before they're really ready or have the integrity to hold it up. Mm-hmm. Do we keep or sweep leveraging celebrity influence for the kingdom? Platforming new Christians who are famous. Keep it or sweep it?
I'm going to go with a sweep.
You're going to sweep it.
For sure. Yeah, it's funny because when I was like just beginning in ministry, like first off, my wife and I we grew up with Justin Bieber, so we're huge Justin Bieber fans.
You're believers.
We're believers, man. And so as we, as Christians who kind of, I feel like sometimes there can be a sense of insecurity when you're growing up in like Western culture as a Christian.
Yeah, we're not cool.
We're not cool. We're lame. We're cringe. People are, whatever. And so sometimes I think the draw is like, oh, look, this famous person is validating my faith. They're validating
good,
and so even like a year or two into my ministry, I remember there was like an interview that came out with Justin Bieber with Zane Lowe, I think. And we were pumped about it. And there was a friend who reached out to us and they had a different perspective. And back then I kind of looked at it like, what? No, like we love Bieber. We're believers. Like it's awesome. Like I just didn't really put that much thought into it. But after seeing how things have gone with Kanye, I definitely feel like if we're talking new believers,
yeah,
hard sweep. I don't think though that if you have somebody who does have influence, and they have a proven track record over time, I don't know if I would necessarily say that it's wrong to try to set up some type of like a outreach event or whatever that leverages some of their influence. But I think that there does need to be like a track record, for sure. It's been really sad to see everything that's happened with Kanye, but his album was pretty sick.
Oh, that his Christian album was awesome, and the choir was
and it was
really
like
good.
What was cool about it at the time, despite how things have gone, is that like his approach to it was like so different than like all the typical like Christian rap that you had like heard up to that point, you know, like
it seemed genuine actually. Like
it really did.
I remember I didn't really take one hard take or another. Just like, well, I've been at ministry long enough that I typically have we'll see. You know, we'll see what the seed of the word does over time and when it's tested. And you know, this is why Jesus gave us the parable of the sower. Like the seed hits.
Turned out he was a touch thorny.
To me, like I wish I could go. I wish I could go back to my like younger like year one youth pastor self and be like, hey buddy, like you don't need like Justin Bieber to validate your faith.
Yeah.
You don't need Kanye West to validate your faith. You know what I mean? It's like
that was really popular though, especially at that time. Like Hillsong had a lot of inroads with celebrities and stuff too. There was a ton of celebrities around like Carl Lentz and those guys, like they just had that. They were in. And I remember a lot of conversation around, you know, like just kind of Christian celebrity and what do you do with that? And I do think it is a little complicated though. Like it's, you know, on the one hand, you know, you take someone like Russell Brand right now, right? I would say overall, so far, like he's doing good. Like in that, like, he's bringing Christ like into the forefront in a way through media and through his platform. Like that's great. It's just, it's not tested. And then what happens is the letdown of, you know, people who maybe started to form their own relationship with the Lord through that person, it can be very destructive.
Well, and a lot of it is like so out of like anybody's control. Like in the one hand, because of their fame, there is just going to naturally be people who are watching them, whether they're intending to like be a model or not, because they're famous people. But yeah, for me, I would kind of take it as an opportunity to like look inward and like question like, what is it within our own hearts that feels like we need a celebrity to validate our faith and make us feel good about our faith? It's like if we're in that place to begin with, there's probably a level of depth and growth that we need to work through. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's often well intended. Like you take. I know I've seen like pastors will, especially like the American megachurch, they'll bring. I remember Craig Groeschel brought like Kevin Durant on one day, like to interview him, and talk about his faith and stuff. And he's since kind of walked away from that, and it's like, I get, trying to appeal to people who might, again, have that hang up of, oh, maybe this isn't cool, or maybe I'm crazy to be thinking about these things, and to hold up, well, this is an exceptional guy and he likes Jesus.
Yeah.
But it seems to more often than not backfire.
I feel like when you step back and take into account like the global church and the persecuted church, it really puts things into perspective.
It's very
like
American.
Here we are and we're wanting a celebrity to validate our faith, and you've got people out in the Middle East and other parts of the world, and they are, dying for their faith, and they don't have anybody of cultural magnitude affirming them, and yet there's something real. There's a depth there that nothing is going to take away from them. And so, yeah, I think it's a hard sweep. What about you?
We should have especially as like pastors who would be in that place where we could platform those, people, celebrities or whatever. Like, I guess not so much in St. John, but, we should have
get Mike Crosby. Is he
Mike from Crosby's?
The popular, the world famous molasses magnate.
We should have a couple things in mind. I'll go and then I'll kick it over to you. So I'm gonna sweep it, I think, overall. One, because biblically speaking, like, not to say that a celebrity with influence, Christian, like within the church, is an elder, but there is a level of authority you're giving that person. And, Paul's really clear, like, do not let a new believer become an elder.
Right.
Like, and there's a reason for that, because their faith hasn't been tested, or they could be puffed up. Like, and there's that, like, So there's that instruction just that's full stop in the scripture. I think I would probably sweep, from a pastoral standpoint, it's probably better for Justin Bieber or Kanye West to just be treated like any other Christian. Get in the congregation.
Put them on the parking team.
Absolutely, man. Like that humility is a key, and like submitting yourself to a new community that doesn't buy your press. I think for their formation, it's massively important. So as a pastor, I wouldn't platform them, hopefully, just out of care for Kanye. Like, Kanye starts coming to Kings. I'm not going to
get him some tithing envelopes and we put him on the parking team. Give him a red shirt.
You're going to see our budget dramatically increase. Yeah. So from a pastoral standpoint, from a scriptural standpoint, it's a sweep. From a pastoral standpoint, it's a sweep. And from a track record standpoint, it just seems, again, there have been examples, and it's not nothing that the Lord does seem to be grabbing some high profile people. Mm-hmm. And I'm trusting him with that and how he's moving the pieces in the whole grand scheme of how he's going to redeem the West. Yeah. But because you have like the Jordan Petersons and the Russell Brands and the George Jenkos. I don't know if you follow him at all. Like these guys seem to be on like a legitimate journey. They still have way more influence than they should for the amount of time they've spent following Jesus. They haven't gotten the long obedience in the same direction yet.
Right.
And so I don't know what you do with that. I don't know how we as Christians can dissect. Maybe that's just part of the negative reality that we live in the West and the kind of a consumeristic culture. It's just that's part of the problem. But I don't know how we do it, like what we do.
I would go hard sweep right into the pit of hell. And
you're a bit of a cynic.
You just picked two that I feel very comfortable sweeping hard. No, I would say this. I'm not saying no good can come of that.
Yeah.
But I'd put it in the category of nevertheless Christ is preached. Right? Like, sometimes God brings good out of bad. Sometimes God, in his wonderful grace, takes really stupid things that we do and still does good stuff with it.
Right.
But I would say not just that platforming new converts, or in some cases even like people who are clearly on a journey that could end with conversion but aren't even there yet. Like for all the reasons you said, Brent, like it's just, I think it's just unbiblical. Like I think there is a principle in that eldership thing. Like if you're putting someone literally on a platform or metaphorically on a platform and holding them up. Yeah. I mean, that is some version of eldership or leadership, or, it's certainly adjacent enough that I think the principle applies. And I do think it's not just a question of, we don't know if it's going to last, but they're not in a place, like that's not I don't want you to emulate a new believer. Even a genuine, solid, loves Jesus.
Yeah, that's good.
Fast forward 30 years and they are a candidate for sainthood and everything's been straight up since then. It's just still not like, you know what I mean? It's like if I was teaching Brazilian jiu-jitsu and you came to my...
You're not going to hold a white belt.
Right, I'm not going to go this white belt. And he might be the best white belt I know.
Yeah.
But I'm still not going to say...
Or a famous white belt.
Sure, but I'm not going to say train with this white belt, right? I'm going to put you with someone who's a little further ahead, right? And so, but I would go even deeper in this, and this is sort of to what you were saying, Spencer. I think celebrity is not of the kingdom. Agreed. Let alone platforming.
Yeah.
Spiritually immature celebrities.
Back to Lucifer.
Right, but celebrity is, I'm not saying every celebrity is not of the kingdom, but the celebrity as a concept, right? And so, like, picture, I don't know, say a rich young ruler coming to Jesus and saying, I want to be part of your thing. What do I have to do? And what's Jesus say? You actually have to give up the riches. I think legitimately, to me, the surest sign of a celebrity having a genuine conversion would be if they gave up their celebrity in order to follow. So if they just said, you know what, I'm deleting my social media. I'm gonna find a different career that doesn't make me. I'm not saying they have to. I'm just saying that would carry more weight with me than their willingness to go.
Like if Kanye went off the grid and just was like, oh, I'm just gonna do this Jesus thing.
Right. Or if Russell Brand said, I'm actually shutting the podcast down, and I'm whatever. I'm going to seminary somewhere, and I might be back in 10 years. I might not. I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying they have to.
Yeah.
I think you could also come to Christ and just continue being an actor, continue being a musician or whatever. But if you were looking at me to go, who is the kind of,
who would you trust to,
who would I trust to have a platform?
Fair,
the person who gives up their platform.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think it shows that we don't fully understand the nature of the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Because what are we saying? We're saying we need, sort of what you were saying, we need them to validate. We're saying, oh, the first could be first for us. And I think Jesus would go, nah, dude, just downshift, right?
There's a new book, here's another recommendation, Mark Sayers' new book called, it's about pillars and platforms. Okay. And he outlines like the world likes a platform, but God uses pillars, and God uses like people who are stable and maybe unseen.
Yep.
And I think that's what you're getting at.
Totally. Well, and I think too, like the notion, I think when what is the point of platforming someone in that sense? Well, we're either looking for their expertise, right? Or we're looking for their testimony, right? And if we're looking for their expertise, a new convert doesn't have any.
Yeah.
If we're looking for their depth of understanding, where they don't, like it's just, none of us did. Some of us still don't, but none of us did. And if we're looking for their testimony, I think the very fact that we think them being a celebrity gives their testimony more value means that the testimony is actually, they're vouching for Jesus.
Yeah.
But not as in, I'm telling you what Jesus did. It's, I'm saying Jesus is more credible because I back him.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're doing the equivalent of Michael Jordan holding up a pair of Nikes.
Yeah.
They're going, you might not believe in Nikes, but if you believe in me, you should believe in them.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody who's never played basketball before, if they put on a pair of Nikes and then dunked over Jordan, that highlights. So I think that idea of Jesus has more credibility. This is kind of what you were saying, Spencer. Jesus has more credibility because celebrity X bought into them.
Yeah.
I think is bordering on idolatry. It's basically saying Jesus needs their help as opposed to they're an example of what Jesus can do. I think if you are the star of your testimony, you misunderstood your testimony.
Yeah.
And I think it's very difficult. I wouldn't say impossible. I think it's very difficult to take someone who is a celebrity and have them hold them up because of their celebrity and say that what you're holding up is Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I would say.
I think. Sorry, one more thing. I think it also, it doesn't necessarily categorically do this, but it accidentally drives home the cult of celebrity in our culture too. That celebrities are what you are aspiring to be, right? And so that idea of like, I think it ceases to be about what's more important than fame is Jesus, and it becomes, you know what'll help me be more famous? Jesus. Right? I can become like this person by grabbing Jesus, as opposed to I can become more like Jesus by grabbing Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna soft sweep this actually. And here's why. One, I do think we need to be careful. Like there is the Lord and like the kingdom seems to have a willingness to like just deal with the reality of the culture that we live in. Like I've thought this before on like in our own context. It's like, you know, we will say like we'll do like a special conference or something, and like we'll spend money and work hard to bring in like a name that people are going to be like go like, oh, John Tyson's speaking at XY, I'm going to go. Which there's part of that's good. It's like, because you know his ministry, but another part is like, yeah, but Jesus is going to be there.
Yeah.
You know, and like so there's this tension. I think that it's just reality. It's not right or wrong, and I think we've got to be. It's not wrong necessarily to be aware of that, or even I'll use the word this leverage very lightly. Not to the point where you you give up what you're actually trying to do and it becomes about the celebrity. But I just think it is worth noting like that we are in a celebrity culture. We are in a consumeristic culture. And that's why we don't do things like this at King's, like where it's like, at the movies, sermon series.
Right.
But I actually get why those churches in the States do it. Like, especially in their context, like, it's like, it's not as simple as like we just never do that. So,
but I would say this too. Then There is a difference between a church platforming a celebrity and a celebrity platforming Jesus.
Yes. Well, and that's
so for us to bring in a celebrity and hold them up and say this is really important, I think is a counter kingdom message. I think for a celebrity to take whatever platform they have,
so that's right,
and say, hey, like.
So that's why my sweep is soft.
Yeah.
And that's where I was going to land with this is like, I don't want Russell Brand to shut up. Like sure. I'm thrilled that,
but he's also not on the preaching schedule at King.
He's not on the preaching schedule, and I think the emphasis needs to be on like church leaders and elders in the church leading the way in like shepherding that stuff.
Yeah.
And like we have to be the gatekeepers on this, and like recognize the difference between a black belt and a white belt. And I think it's really important that's where it's gone sideways. I think pastors, well-intended pastors, like unsanctified, it's an unsanctified type of thinking almost like that's caused that to happen.
It's using the thinking of the culture within the confines of the church rather than using kingdom thinking
within the confines of the culture.
Right. Well, and so I think that, again, I don't think that the fact that you are a celebrity shouldn't mean you have to be quieter about Jesus than anybody else and your journey with him and what you're wrestling with and all that. Although, again, I do think it's even hard if the conversations you're having about Jesus are informed by what will get ratings. Yeah. Even that's a hard, like, again, I think you would be better if a celebrity came to me and said, what should I do? I want to learn more about Jesus. I would say, go to a school where no one cares who you are and study, as opposed to invite the professors from that school on your podcast and have these discussions in real time and see if you can get some clicks out of it, right? Because it's an opportunity for a more honest thing. However, if that's what you do, whatever, I'm not saying you shouldn't. My issue is not with the celebrities. It's with the leaders who are platforming them.
That's what I was saying.
Who are saying, can we borrow your credibility so Jesus seems more credible, as opposed to someone else going, I'm just publicly trying to figure out if Jesus is credible. I think those are two different.
Can you guys think of any, like, one of the things is like in church history, like maybe the black belts, to use your analogy, that have sort of lasted the test of time. They're like, the legends. Yeah. Were any of them like famous first?
If you go back into, like, if you start digging into a lot of the folks that are considered saints in the Catholic tradition, in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, in the Anglican tradition, you do find a lot of them who were like,
they were well known at first.
Yeah, they were either super well known.
Wasn't Augustine pretty well known before? Is that true?
I'm not sure. Powerful guy, I think.
Yeah, like they're people of influence, like people who are royalty, people who are this lady was the daughter of a noble family and she was gonna own this village, and you know what I mean, like who were the closest equivalent of the time. And what's always respected about them is that they laid that down. Like that they refused, say, to take their inheritance, instead went to a monastery. That they, instead of taking the position that was going to be theirs by hereditary right to rule over people, and instead went as a missionary, that kind of thing. And so that's to my point. Like, I think in the long term, the idea of someone who gave up their celebrity, which would be very Jesus, who gave it up, worldly influence, and 20 years later, God gave them back spiritual influence because of their willingness to lay that down. And their influence is based on their maturity, their obedience, their sanctification, not how good they bounce a basketball or the fact that they used to be funny or whatever their thing is, right?
Yeah.
I would have more respect for that myself.
Yeah, it's a tough one because go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, in all of this, the only thought that comes to me is like, I wonder for like the pastor who is in Los Angeles or New York or wherever, like these contexts where you might actually have an opportunity for a celebrity to come to your church. I wonder practically what that looks like behind the scenes, though, because I gotta think that it's probably a really difficult thing to walk out.
Yeah.
Because even to your comment about put them on the parking lot team, like I'm thinking like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
but then I'm
but-
thinking like, man, practically, how would that even
Although-
work?
although
it legitimately wouldn't, like, especially if you get like
Right.
an A-list celebrity
Well,
or something.
I mean-
If Chris Pratt started coming to King's Church,
Yeah.
you could not put him on the parking team.
Probably not.
1,000%.
Although it's sort of like, I would wonder actually if that'd be less of an issue in somewhere like LA, where it's just not a big, like I hear celebrities talk about in New York City, just no one cares. Like, can you walk down the street? Yeah, no one cares. Like, I wonder,
Right.
if actually those of us who are further away from the epicenters of that stuff would find it weirder because they're like, oh yeah, that's Chris. I was a PA on a movie he made.
Back to the shepherd, though. I think so. Like, if Chris Pratt came here, I wouldn't put him, like, to protect and pastor him.
Yeah.
I would not put him on the parking team because that would just hijack. Like, he would just be stuck.
No, totally.
So like there is, again, like, don't platform him, but also don't put him in, like, situations that, like, his life doesn't. One more thing on this. This is good conversation. I would say I would not encourage, like, back to the Russell Brand thing. I don't know if it would be a mistake, I think, to forsake, like, the lane that God gave him in his redeeming. Like that, like, I wouldn't want to see, I get your point about, like, not chasing platform. But I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater in that, like God also, like, it's very powerful when the Lord does convert somebody in a powerful position and then turns them the other way. And, like, they still are that person, but now as a new Christian, I just wouldn't want to see, like, that, like, whatever
If that influence is God given, it'll keep. Like, if God has decided that you should be a person of influence, then giving away, like, letting that platform go away, is not a permanent thing. Right.
Yeah.
So
but within the lane, though, of the way God's wired that person, like, I think that's what I'm getting at. Like, I wouldn't want to see Russell Brand, like, God's made him a person that's really good at, like, he's very smart. He's good. Like, he's going to be in front of people. God wired him for that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see him go to a monastery. That's what I'm getting at.
So Paul is a leader.
Right.
Dominant force.
That's who I'm
driving
thinking of.
hard. Right. But he went away and studied for years.
He had already studied for years.
Yeah, no, but he disappears for, 3 years or whatever?
Yeah, but the Lord didn't undo all of that. Like,
no, I'm not
at that conversion.
I'm not saying Russell Brand should never speak in public again. I'm saying you don't need to do the earliest phases of your discipleship as a consumable media product for other people.
I agree. Right. I agree.
So
with that.
I don't necessarily mean go away to a monastery. Like, that's what you did it in the medieval times, right? And clergy were dominant cultural forces then too, right? So, like, becoming clergy wasn't giving up worldly influence.
Right. It was gaining.
It was going to the bottom of that pecking order, though,
right?
And rising within that, right? But the idea that someone like that would go, you know what? If I'm really serious about this, I'm not saying I'll never have another podcast, but I'm going to shut this one down, and I need to go learn before I set up here and try to teach.
Yeah,
I need to go be formed. Before
and he's certainly not doing
others.
that. Like, he's processing it out loud.
Yeah,
sure.
And this is to get all Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message, right?
Right.
And so if the medium is celebrity, the message becomes celebrity.
Yeah.
So I think you need to not give up influence permanently, but I think in order to give up celebrity in the way the world defines it, I think there's an argument to be made, maybe on a case-by-case basis, but for laying down celebrity as a greater testament to what the kingdom is about, than keeping celebrity and thinking I can use worldly means to advance the kingdom.
Yeah.
Right. And what I was just going to say is the context where that gets sorted out is if you're planted in a local church submitted to a pastor.
Totally.
So that's ultimately, I think, what we would probably all want for these guys, but it's probably really hard practically.
That's the problem with and I mean, I made this dichotomy and it exists, but the whole them using their platform versus the church platforming them is to say, that said, figuring out your faith as a lone ranger, who happens to have a YouTube channel or whatever, is actually not the healthiest way to go about that.
It really does require, like, I'll say, we don't have celebrities in the King's ecosystem, but there are some very successful and impressive people. And I'll be the first to admit, as a pastor, like that does humble you from a shepherding standpoint, where it's like, well, what do I have to tell the CEO of this company. You know, I'm their spiritual father.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think there's a level of maybe that happens in the Western church sometimes because, like, you know, what do you do when Clint Eastwood becomes like, hey, tell me how to be a Christian, you know? And you're like that. That's intimidating for the average pastor.
Well, but I would say that the reason that's intimidating is a cultural baggage we have, not a kingdom perspective.
Yeah,
in the same way,
you have to process though pastorally through that. It's like,
right? Yeah.
Okay, if it's about being a CEO and knowing what to do with millions of dollars, I need to sit at your feet. But if this is about how to follow the master, I can tell you some stuff.
Hey, look, if Russell Brand wants to tell us how to drive engagement for the back corner more, right? We'll take that call.
Were you going to add something there?
Well, I was just going to say, like, I think that part of it is it's like the way that the pastor is even viewed culturally speaking. I think there used to be a lot of like honor and like just kind of cultural understanding that, oh yeah, this is like an authority figure that people are going to like voluntarily come under their leadership if they're a part of a church. But even that is like not as like common anymore, even within the church sometimes. So maybe like as you were talking about, some of what makes it hard is maybe even sorting out like your role as a pastor and kind of awareness of that. Like,
so here's a thought I'm having just as I'm sitting here. My dad's a pastor. Your dad's a pastor.
Yeah.
My dad pastored when I was growing up in a small town too, which changes the dynamic a lot. And it was just a whole different reality than like when I remember going up to the St. John Regional up here with my dad, and it was like free parking. Here's a special room for you. I remember going to my first orientation for pastors at the hospital in Halifax, and someone said, where should we park? Can we get our parking validated? The guy goes, you're here for work. Your work should pay for your parking. It was just a different reality, right? And we can talk about that as part of the decline of society and Pomona, and there's a certain amount of that's part of it. But I wonder if part of why God has allowed that is because as the value on celebrity has gone up, he's going, I don't want my representatives to be too easily confused with celebrity status.
Right.
And so he's gone, actually, I'm gonna require your credibility to come more from the life you live than the position you hold.
Right.
And more from how much you help people from the platform, literal or figurative, you're on, than the fact that you're on that platform, because the value of celebrity's gone up so much. And he's like, I need to create more gap, more disconnect between celebrity and pastor. And I don't know, for me, nothing drives me more nuts than the concept of a celebrity pastor, because again, I just think those are antithetical. And so I wonder if there isn't a potential grace for us to lean into there, even if it feels like a suffering sometimes, to go, this actually, like, Jesus had a lot of people who listened to him.
Yeah.
But he also had a lot of people who treated him like garbage too and didn't care who he was and everything else. And maybe am I more like Jesus in a culture that doesn't value who I am or what I do that way than in a culture that does?
Right.
I will say, as far as like who do I look up to, like just as Brent and as a follower of Jesus, like increasingly it's people you've never heard of.
Yeah.
You know, people I know in the church and people in my family that I've just seen model faithfulness, you know, over decades. Like that seems to increasingly be, again, standing the test of time. Seems to, and I think we need to be better at platforming them. Maybe
I have an increasing interest in dead people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
there you go.
That's all I read for the most part.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I don't really care what someone my age or younger put out in their cool new book. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but I'm from a personal, I can only read so much.
Yep.
Right.
And I go, man, there are 2,000 years of people who are definitely good. Maybe I'm going to lean into that more.
When we're dealing with the eternal, it's probably just wisdom to just see if something has some staying power. I think we were in church a few weeks ago and I leaned over to you. They were singing In Christ Alone. Yeah. And I was just like, you know, a lot of these songs we're not going to sing throughout eternity. This one might make it.
This one might be on the playlist.
This one might make it. You know, it's just got that staying power. Totally. It's timeless. And I think the kingdom's timeless. Yeah. And I tend
to. One of the things that I don't buy into the whole Catholic theology around saints, but that notion of like,
not entirely anyway.
No, that's what I'm saying. But that notion that there is like
a little bit,
there is a kind of a stock list of people who are dead, who we know their full story on earth, that we look at and go, there's someone worth listening to, like sort of like that signed offness of that.
Right.
Like there's something about that I value versus just going, who's the cool guy right now that's willing to say Jesus into a mic? Let's get him up there and everyone listen to them. Or who's the person who, you know, again, how many times have we seen this? Like, oh man, this guy's church is growing right now, and you know, they reported all these big numbers for whatever. That's so, and then it turns out like they're a wild alcoholic who's only sober when they're sleeping with their mistress. And
maybe that's another conversation for another day, but on like how God likes to use broken vessels and like a lot of the great, powerful moves of God. You know, you think about like the Jesus movement, Lonnie Frisbee, like that's a head trip, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
But let's save that for another day. I want to, how do like you're ministering now to like Gen Z and like Gen Alpha's coming in, right? Like
we've made it through the alphabet.
It seems to me, and again, I want to turn some conversation over to Spencer here, but like, and just again, nobody's coming in here as an expert. Like we're not trying to be Larry King either, right? Like I'm not trying to do these, like we were just inviting friends to have conversations, but you know, you are ministering to, you know, like students right now, and we're increasingly in a soundbite, you know, like superficial, like the value of the quick.
It's a trend oriented culture.
Yeah. Like, so like taking this conversation further, like what are you seeing is happening in Gen Z, Gen Alpha? What do you think God's doing and raising up in that generation? Are you seeing maybe some of these, the dark side of, you know, the culture that we live in? Are you starting to see how the Lord is breaking in that generation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what has me excited right now is like, it's not even just what I'm seeing in my own context, but it's what I'm hearing like from contexts like all around the world. I mean, like there are stories pouring in from, you know, all throughout the States and the UK and places in Australia. And I mean, we just got to be a part of the Gather 25 event that was literally showcasing like the whole world, the whole body of Christ. It was amazing. And just to hear all these stories of the ways God is working in the next generation is super exciting. A friend of mine posted this online a couple weeks ago, and he said Gen Z is not post-Christian, they're pre-revival.
Ooh.
And I saw that and I thought, wow.
I got $50 that says that friend is Pentecostal.
You know what? I actually don't know. So. I don't think he
turn
is.
Not the sentiment, just the turn of phrase.
Maybe. But I think that for me, like just that phrase is a helpful kind of shift in my perspective, because it's like, are we at a point right now? A lot of people are talking about revival right now. The winds are shifting. There's lots of stories that are going around, and that's great. When I look at my context, when I look at even our region, can I say that, oh yeah, we're in the midst of revival? Like, no, we're not at this current moment. Yeah. But as I'm hearing the stories, as I'm hearing people's kind of, it feels like there's like a posture shift with the next generation where a lot of stuff I used to be hearing was very negative, very cynical. Sorry, AJ. Very kind of like. But I think that there's an invitation right now we might be looking at the same data set, but to kind of shift that perspective. And so whether it's, you know, obviously we've all heard about what God did at Asbury University a couple years back. There's been lots of cool stuff happening on college campuses across the States. Pastor Chris and Pastor Justin, who are on our team, they got to go to LC in the UK last May, and they got to go to some special like overnight prayer meetings that were happening at some of the churches in that area. And like I don't know the numbers. I think around like 1,000 young adults, overnight prayer, like just story after story after story. So what's happening for me is I'm kind of hearing all of this, and I'm sensing like even in our own context, we had 21 days of prayer, and there is an increase in my personal sense of the manifest presence of God in our gatherings. I would say like normatively, I would sense God's presence like in a physical way, like maybe once a month. I mean, I'm not tracking the data on it, but you know what I mean? It's not something that I was expecting.
There should be an app for that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But like, honestly, like just over the last 2.5 months, it's like, oh my gosh, like whether it's in the kids ministry or the youth ministry, the young adults ministry, or our prayer rooms or our Sunday services, it's like consistently you can just feel this atmosphere shift. And you know, whether it's a girl in our youth group who she's leading a youth alpha in her local high school right now, and they saw like almost 50 kids come to their first outing. Wow, awesome. We had youth a couple weeks ago, and there was a tech malfunction And it kind of led to like this impromptu, like acoustic worship set that was kind of awkward at first, but we just went with it. And the Spirit really came into the room. And I felt this spontaneous like word on me as a good Pentecostal would. And I'm in the middle of just kind of sharing this word. And this student in the crowd, he just raises his hand. He's like, that's me. And I'm just like, whoa, like that's never happened to me before. And it's like all of a sudden that becomes the catalyst towards like all of them jumping up on their feet and we're praying over them to receive the Holy Spirit. And it's like, these are just like little stories. But I feel like ultimately the invitation right now is there still might be some very real things that we need to look at that are concerning, but to kind of have that posture shift where it's like, oh man, we're living in this post-Christian society and everything's going to hell in a handbasket versus like when you study the cycles of how the Spirit has moved in the past, it would seem to be that we are in a phase of time right now where there's an invitation to lean in. And so at our church, we're trying to lean into prayer. We're trying to lean into hosting God's presence more. And man, even as one conference is coming up, like I'm super excited to see what God's going to do there, because I feel like even over the last couple of years at one conference, it feels like there's just been like this slow turning of the dial, even with just the experience in the room. There's a hunger, there's an openness, there's a desire for more of God, and man, I'm excited to see what God does here. I'm excited to see what God does in Atlantic Canada because I've been here my whole life, and I've read so many stories of, historic moves of God, but I want to see it happen here.
Same.
And not just like a good service that goes on for a couple hours. Like I'm talking like the unprecedented type of stuff that you read about.
Societal transformation.
Reformation in the culture. Anyway.
You read about that stuff like in the Welsh revival, that like literally they're measuring, crime rates, divorce, like all that stuff just tanked. When that happened. I'm hungry for that, man. It's exciting, and I keep getting that thought, like, because we're experiencing some of the same stuff. That just there's that sense of, a couple of different analogies come to mind, that like the water table's rising or the tides coming in, or that there's just like I have a picture in my mind almost of like in a sailboat they kind of put the sail up, and there's that initial like there's been no wind and it's just sort of flapping, and then that's that initial catch, just that And it feels like there's just some of those initial, like just little gusts of wind are happening. And I think we're in for a holy hurricane soon.
And I think what's encouraging is it seems like more and more every conversation I'm having, I'm hearing the same things. I mean, like I was just talking to a pastor friend of mine who's in the Valley, Pastor John Dixon. Like he's given reports of they're doing the Alpha Youth series right now. Their youth ministry has like grown by 1/3 within the last month. It's just like lots of cool stuff happening in all kinds of different places. It's like,
since you talked about that whole idea of like whatever post-Christian versus pre-revival kind of thing. I think I don't know. There's this classic, and he's dead now, so I can talk about him. Tim Keller line.
The late Tim Keller,
where he talks about the whole idea of like a lot of people have been inoculated against the gospel. And I think that's post-Christendom. Like they don't actually know the gospel, but they think they know enough of it.
They know it enough to dismiss it.
Right. They think they know it enough that they've dismissed it. And I think there actually is something to be said for a generation that is, again, they're not post-Christian. They're nothing. They're at ground zero, right? Because they don't have that immunity built up, like they don't think they understand the message enough to discount it. And I think too, there's something from what I'm seeing, which again I'm seeing it from a further away than you are, Spencer. But there's an increasing pragmatism in the younger generations that they're more curious. They've got mental health issues. They see the breakdown of family. They see all this kind of stuff. That they're not so much worried in what is the most compelling argument on paper. They like what actually will work, like what will give my life purpose and meaning, like what will give me hope, what will get me through. And so I think even then a generation or so before, who some of the arguments of secularism, the arguments of you go back even another generation or so, the arguments of atheism, but all these, even like some of the more some of the less biblically informed ideologies of our culture, they're going, cool, but that isn't actually helping anyone. And so they're going, what actually is going to work? And the other thing that I think is, I don't know, that occurred to me, sort of what you were talking about, Brent, too, like kind of that rising water table. A lot of times when we talk about generations, and again, I'm Gen X, and Gen X was one of the first generations people actually talked about in real time. You know what I mean? Like it was like this next generation of kids, right? As they're coming up, like the concept was there, but that was, the baby boomers were just the people who were born after World War II. It wasn't like a whole social set and a prediction about where they're headed, right? They were all adults before, that came up. But there's always been kind of that constant refrain of, the kids these days, what's up with the kids these days, where are the kids these days? And I think the thing that seems different to me now, in what I'm hearing people like you say who are working with these emerging generations, is that it's less about where the hope comes not from where these kids are at, but from what God is doing, right? It's not these we're going to be okay because this is a great generation. I mean, some people have a lot of hope for this generation, but I think the more important reality is, what does it seem like is on God's heart? For this generation, right?
Not to bemoan like the kids these days.
Yeah, it's irrelevant.
But I think part of it is, though, like all of us, as we've watched, mental health, gender confusion, like some of the stuff that generation are dealing with has left, like the prior generations just being like this is bad. Like this is really bad. Yeah. They need a miracle. Like, and it just seems like the Lord is meeting them in a profound way, like that there's a profound level of despair and brokenness that had hit them at an early age.
Sorry, go ahead, man.
I was just going to say, I think that there's an increasing awareness amongst my generation that we need a miracle.
Yeah.
Because there's so many options, there's so many algorithms, there's so many people saying so many things, and you just get to a point where it's overwhelming. And so I think that's part of what God is doing too. It's like there's an awareness that, to your point, pragmatism, it's like, they're not so much asking the question of like, is this like true, even though that's an important question to ask. Absolutely. But it's like, does this work? Does this make a difference to my life? And I actually think this is where, because this is one of the trends that I see like across denominations. There's like seems to be a collective openness and embrace of the things of the Spirit. Yeah. I think that this is going to be super, super important in this kind of age and stage of next generation ministry. Even, I mean, I come from a Pentecostal church. We love the gifts, we love the tongues, we love it all, right? Yeah. But like even integrating like more kind of space for the prophetic in our weekly spaces. We have a 30-minute prayer meeting before youth every week. And part of that time is like every single week before the service even begins, we're just creating space for the leaders and the students who attend to just listen and practice.
That's essentially what I was getting at, is that like there's a level of, in the millennials and the Gen Xers, there's a quality of life almost back to like the post-Christian, like it's not that bad. We're doing all right without Jesus almost. And it's like there's such a desperation.
People talk about this financially, about how like, where things are going. Like basically this generation is going to be bankrupt, right? Actually, if you're the generation that's bankrupt, you get to, for sure this doesn't work, right? Like what we've been doing, right?
And that's what I'm trying to say.
There's a desperation.
There's a desperation, like, God, you have to do something. And they're more open than my generation ever was. Absolutely. Or your generation. Like there's such an openness. And to your point though, to the power, like, it's very important that we, like as local church communities and as Christians, learn how to live the life of the Spirit, because they're not like there's legitimate like bondage, dysfunction, like there's stuff that we're gonna have to be. It's funny, like for the Gen Xers or the millennials, like there's a lot of apologetics really had a huge role in reaching people, and I think the next wave is going to be like deliverance. It's like deliverance and like prophetic ministry.
What Mike said a couple episodes ago, Mike McNeil, about how the best apologetic is the power of God.
Yes.
Right?
Totally. Yeah. Well, Barna, like their whole thing, the open generation, that thing that the study that they did of all these 13 to 17-year-olds, like they coined it the open generation because one of the biggest attributes they saw in all their studies was, oh man, there's an openness, right? And that is good, but it also shows that, they're open, but they're also opening themselves up to a lot of demonic stuff.
Totally. Yeah,
and
we've been talking about that a bunch here.
Because of that, it's like, yeah, how much more important is the power of the Spirit and being equipped in that and having a familiarity
knowing
and a comfort.
The truth.
Yeah.
But even that openness, like the notion that there's definitely something spiritual out there is from, I think, an evangelistic, a missiological perspective, a much easier place to meet people in. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's why a lot of times in the global South, there's so much, there's been such an explosion within the church, is because like you don't have to convince people there's something beyond taste, touch, feel, right?
Right.
And so as much as I do think churches are going to have to be more and more prepared to deal with the spiritual fallout of that level of openness in terms of deliverance ministries and that kind of stuff, I do think the potential to see people come to faith in a meaningful way is a whole different deal. Even versus, like, if you were argued into the kingdom, you can probably be argued out of it.
Right.
And if you gave your life to Jesus because you thought it would help you to be a nice person, then once you've checked off niceness, it's pretty easy to drift.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think if you go, man, I have been miraculously delivered from whatever, from
freed me from what nothing else could.
Right. Like then you're back to Peter. Like, well, where else would we go?
Yeah.
You have the words that bring eternal life.
I can personally attest to that because I remember a student in my youth ministry a couple of years ago began to deconstruct their faith, and they wanted to meet me for coffee, and they started, going through. They brought their whole laundry list of issues before me, and they basically wanted me to explain to them why I believed in Jesus. And when I first started going to Bible college, I went through like an initial period where it was like, oh my gosh, like all this apologetics, all this like theology, like this is amazing. And it is. It's incredible to know that world exists. But as I sat there trying to explain myself to this person, I kind of realized, like, if I were to sit here, it was almost like I was having like a conversation with myself as I'm trying to share my testimony. If I were to sit here and tell this kid that the reason that I believe in Jesus is because I read a convincing airtight argument from a theology textbook, it's like, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
I've been raised in this from the time that I was young, and I don't know how to explain it other than the Holy Spirit has revealed this to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I've met God. I've had encounter after encounter after encounter with God.
I often say the reason I believe is because my alternative is to believe I'm bat crap crazy. Like, there's just, you know what I mean? Like, that literally, I either have to be a Christian or institutionalized.
Yeah.
There's no other explanation for the phenomenon.
I feel like back then, as I sat there with that kid, I thought to myself, this isn't convincing.
Yeah.
And I'm still praying for that guy on his journey. But the more I think about it, the more I think actually with where we're headed, I actually think this is going to be, this is going to be one of the most convincing and compelling things that will grab the heart of a generation. It's not, and there's a space for that, but it's people who have been marked by the presence of God, the power of God. They know Him personally.
That's the whole, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, not the blood of the Lamb and their great argument.
Yeah, there's
a
place,
set of facts or whatever.
I love apologetics, and I love, like, one of my favorite things to do is just like to take the knees out from an overzealous atheist that hasn't actually thought very honestly about that. But I do agree with you. We are in a time now where, like, I think the church needs to quadruple down on just praying for power encounters. You know, like we had Justin Allen on here a couple episodes ago, and like him talking about, God spoke to me in the backwoods of Arctic Manitoba.
Yeah.
And like, cause my mama had been praying for me, and like I had just like an encounter, and it's like, you're never going to have your apologetics all buttoned down, but you can't deny an experience with the living Christ.
That line, what is it? A man with a theory is never at the mercy of a man with a testimony.
Yeah. There's that, the story in the Gospels where the guy when Jesus healed the blind man the man that was blind from birth, and the Pharisees bring him in to start like questioning him, like, well, who is he, and is he a prophet? And he's like, I don't know what he is.
Yeah.
All I know is I was blind and now I see. Right. And he's like, what do you say to that? There's nothing to be said.
No, you weren't.
So you mentioned we got just a few minutes left here, but you mentioned like deconstruction. Do you find like there was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, like that was very, like there was a wave of it almost that hit your generation, like people between the age of like 25 and 33.
The last of the grew up in church generation.
It really was.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deconstruct if you didn't have anything to deconstruct.
I feel like you're a better person to ask than me because I'm a little out of touch on that, but I don't feel like it's quite as front and center as it was. What are you finding?
You definitely don't hear about it as much. I mean, it came like a tsunami back in like 2020 when everybody was trapped inside their house and had nothing but the internet, you know,
Yeah,
to
and then
do
the
all day.
algorithms just fed them the bad
So
ideas.
I think that was a huge part of it, but we're not, like, I'm in my context not hearing as much about it. But I do think that it's still something that we need to be aware of because, it's despite the fact that I might not be hearing about it, it's still very much a real thing that is happening. And deconstruction, it's such an interesting phenomena because on the one hand, like, to me, when I think about it, you know, you can kind of talk about it from a couple different angles, but one of the things I find most interesting is seeing it almost as a downstream effect of maybe something that wasn't quite in the right space within our churches. Do you know what I mean?
The last of the kids that grew up in church and never really received the...
Yeah. They had the form of godliness denying the power thereof, right? Yeah.
And I've thought about that, and we'll shift this into parenting in a second, but what do parents do, though, where it's like... Because I think back on my own life, and I think deconstruction is a healthy part at some level of any kid that's grown up in a Christian context. Like you do need to take this thing apart and reassemble it for yourself.
Totally. It is one of the things about the whole deconstruction thing that bugs me on a not important level is it's one of those, like, you guys know this isn't new, right?
Well, that's what I was getting. I was getting at that. It's something that happens.
It's been given a term, and it's you know, there are communities around it now that it's like it's an old thing that's just happening in the internet generation, right?
But there was a zeitgeist level to it though this last time because of the internet,
that's
because
what
of
I mean.
social media, and because that generation thought they're the only ones
But
to ever go
I
through
think
that.
that's more of a reflection. Like that's what it looks like for a thing that's always happened to happen in our current cultural moment, not a new thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And people used to just call it whatever. They fell away, or they lost their faith, or they asked some big questions, and they, you know, like. But I mean,
we all do that.
Everybody, and again, you have to.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing, we would talk about coming to own your faith, right?
Yeah.
And some people never did, and they walked away.
Yeah.
And some people did, and they continued to follow Jesus. But it's the same basic thing.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, everybody who deconstructs they're going to be doing it for different reasons. But for me, like, what has been helpful is, like, I would just encourage parents to, like, try to, like, be proactive in introducing your child to, like, the broader the big questions, but just the broader, like, church. I feel like a lot of the reason that deconstruction happens is because, like, we're raised in, like, one church tradition, and we're told by our church tradition this is the way that it is, and there's nothing else outside of this, and we're the only church that's right. And the church down the street, well, they believe the gospel too, but they're wrong on X, Y, and Z. And it's like, this generation is very, like, interconnected. This generation, you know, they're connected on the internet, they're connected around the globe. Like, there's a hunger to kind of branch out beyond maybe, like, the one, but to know that the church can sustain that. The church is so big. Like, I remember there was one person within our church who was deconstructing and didn't kind of realize this until after the fact, but just kind of realizing, like, man, I wish that they would have understood that it's like, Christianity is so much bigger than our church and our experiences in our one church that we've grown up in our whole lives. And if there was just, like, a little bit of room for people to play in the sandbox of Christianity, do you know what I mean?
No, I've totally seen that thing where people think they're deconstructing their faith.
Right.
And what they're actually deconstructing is a very narrow denominational identity.
Like that particular expression.
Right. Like, it turns out maybe you don't not believe in Jesus. You're just actually Baptist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like turns out you're Catholic, but you just grew up in a Wesleyan church, or like there's like you don't have to people push the things that I hear people a lot of times push back against. I'm like, you know, like, there's a huge swath between the ditches of orthodoxy that actually agree with you on that. Like, you don't have to throw out Jesus in order to go, this doesn't really track with me anymore.
I think, though, what was really confusing, though, about those years is that, like, you had, like, two different types of people using the same term. And, you know, there was one group of people who were using deconstruction. In my view, it seemed as though they were trying to reform their faith in the image of the culture. And then there was probably another group of people who genuinely had some, like, issues, but they were trying to reform their faith according to the standard of Scripture. And the reason that I've never really been super crazy about using the term deconstruction is because of that confusion. And I feel like ultimately what was happening with people is like it all came back down to authority. Like, what is your authority?
Yes.
And the moment the lights came on for me was when I realized, because I was using the term too, like, I deconstruct too, and deconstruction is healthy. And it's like, I mean, it ultimately is semantics, but what I was saying when I was saying I'm deconstructing is I'm getting a hold of Scripture, and I'm trying to reconcile my lived experience, my church tradition with what I see in Scripture. But then there was a whole nother group of people who that's not what they were doing. They were uncomfortable with certain, what I would say are clear things in the Scriptures that Christians have believed throughout all of church history for the most part. And so I feel like to your point, it's kind of like a new label on like a common thing that's happened throughout history. And I think that if we can just hold space for people as they ask questions,
or like, and I'll use this as a segue into the final thing I want to chat with you about, but like as pastors, which is a form of like spiritual fatherhood, or as parents, I think we got to get better at leading people into the tensions and into the gray areas or into the stuff that's debatable, or
for sure.
Because I think there's been a fear of that, and so
that's the easy answers,
right?
Generally don't work,
right?
And so I think a lot of people, they go, oh, these easy answers didn't do it, and so then they throw the whole thing out, right? And that's why I think that distinction you make, Spencer, like I hadn't really heard that before. That deconstructing, as in. Like the word that came to my mind when you're describing that is like a refining, right? Like what can be burned off and the truth of Scripture still remain, versus which I do see a lot of people do. Is there a way I can continue to call myself a Christian in a way that will not put me in opposition to or tension with the culture? Right. And those are very different. Like one actually is constructive and purifying and moves you closer to Jesus. The other substitutes cultural approval for the lordship of Christ, and then just says, I can keep the cultural trappings. So in one sense, they're the opposite. One is going, how do I keep the trappings and suck the heart out of it? And the other one is saying, what are the trappings I can let go of and still keep the heart of it?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So you're a relatively new dad.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and you have been called and blessed by God to raise kids today. What are you learning, man? How do you process all this? You see the world that your little guy is coming up in. Like, what are you learning?
Oh man, that's a big question. I feel like I personally am having to learn to give myself a lot of grace, because it's super easy to like go into parenting with a whole lot of idealism. And man, like I'm
Not
a reader.
Just easy. That's just what we all do.
It's just what happens, right? I'm a reader. I like podcasts. Like, so I was doing all the reading, all the listening, and I think that's great. I mean, it sure beats being like apathetic, but I feel like we're just, the biggest thing is me and Sarah just trying to stay in sync, stay on the same page. I feel like sometimes what happens is it's like, I feel like dads kind of like abdicate their role sometimes in like being involved in like the child rearing, and there can very quickly be like two different perspectives that begin to emerge in a marriage about stuff. One thing I feel like Sarah and I have done well is from the very beginning, like we've been reading the same stuff, we've been tracking with the same stuff, we've been talking it out, we've been just doing our best to stay in unity, and it's just made it really helpful. I remember when Hunter was born, I just decided like, I'm just flipping a switch. I don't care how uncomfortable this feels. I'm jumping in with both feet. So I'm changing the dirty diapers. I'm just going to do the stuff.
Getting up with him at night or whatever.
Getting up with him. Whatever I need to do. And honestly, I feel like that kind of mental switch that I just decided to make from the moment that he was born has made all the difference. Like Sarah and I we're learning a lot. We're making lots of mistakes, but we're united in the midst of it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I feel excited about that.
Humbled and united.
Absolutely.
I think that united thing is really important for the kids. Like, it's more, I think within pretty broad strokes of reason, it's more important for your kids to know you're united than it is for you actually to do a good job.
Yeah.
Like, I think there have been times
or to get it right all the
That's
time.
what I mean.
Yeah,
Like I don't mean in the grand scheme of things, but like
we want to do a good
the
job.
call we are united on is in the big picture probably better for our kids than if we could have gotten the call 20% more right. And so like Kelly and I would tell our kids, like I would say, I agree with your mother.
Yeah.
No matter what your mother says. Like if your mother says, go outside and roll around in broken glass, I agree with your mother. And now that's not to say Kelly and I would never have conversations.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, stop telling them to go.
Right. But like in the moment, you're never going to play us against each other. If, you know, and we would, as your kids get older, a mild pro tip and they come and ask you something, I'd often go, have you talked to your mother about this? Not because they need to talk to her first, but because if they have talked to her first, you're not going to get a different answer from me.
Oh,
right?
That's a whole thing. They play you on each other.
Well, what did mom say? Well, mom said I have to go outside and roll around in broken glass. Well, I'll go get the peroxide. You get busy, right? Because I agree with your mother. And again, not as in your mother is in charge, but as what she would say the same thing. I agree with your father. You don't know what he said. Don't need to know what he said.
Yeah.
We agree. Like you'll never turn us against each other.
Yeah.
I so remember especially with your first kid, your bubble gets healthily burst too, right? It's like I remember thinking, you know, we're gonna invite our daughter into our world. We're not gonna schedule around her. She's gonna go with it. It's like very quickly that just nope. Just you're But you said something, and I want to encourage you in it. You said like just kind of give myself some grace. A guy that I look up to very much, Pastor Dan Lamus. I don't know if he remembers ever saying this, but I remember him saying it to me when my kids were really little. It's just like, dude, give yourself a lot of grace in this season. Like you're going to be tired. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be like you're just not the best version of yourself a lot of the time. And you just need to realize it's a season. Do your best and God's going to work through you in that. And that helped me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we had our first kid, like most parents, we were always like, they get the sniffles, like, do they need medicine? Or they, you know, like you're just always worried. And so we had a wonderful doctor. She'd been a missionary doctor in Haiti for years. So she was like super laid back. You know what I mean? Like she's just like, I don't mean she didn't care. I just mean she wasn't like, she'd seen how people can live. And so she was like, everyone in Canada's doing fine, you know? But anyways, we would come to her like, what about this? Or, is he growing fast enough? Is he growing too fast? Is he like all this kind of stuff? And finally one day she just looked at us. She goes, guys, he'll survive having you as his parents.
Oh, that's so
and
good.
It was that same idea though, of just going like, oh, okay. Like there's a broad range of that's fine, you know, and he'll survive.
Let's go around the horn. Start with you, Spencer. What at this stage of your fatherhood, give the dozens 60 seconds of wisdom of something you're learning.
Oh man, can somebody else go first? 60 seconds.
Okay, so AJ, you're in a different stage.
Yeah, I mean,
you got college age kids and adult kids.
Yeah, I'm pretty much through the thick of
we're in all three different stages. Actually,
totally. Yeah. So I think a lot of times parents overestimate how much control they have and how their kids turn out. Oof. And I think there's this illusion of control that if I parent the right way, my kids will turn out the way I want them to turn out, and that everything will go the way I want it to go. And I think sometimes there are parents who don't hit a lot of road bumps, and they think that's because of how good they did.
Right.
So here would be my advice.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that there's a huge potential to beat yourself up.
Yeah, I see that a lot in church. If your
parenting journey turns out to be a rough one, and I will not go into details, but I will say that parenting has been a pretty mixed bag experience for me, and I've had some great joys, but also the deepest wounds I carry are from being a father. You cannot control your kids. You cannot control what kind of kid they are. You can control what kind of father they are.
Yeah.
And I think if you look to the example of the father, like God has some kids that didn't turn out great, but he's still a good dad.
Yeah.
And so
plays the long game.
Yes. And so to the fathers, I would just say, yeah, you need to pay attention to what kind of dad you're being, not because that guarantees anything about what choices your kids will make or how that journey will go or what the hiccups along the road will be or what the tragedies along the way will be, but only to say, like, the thing you can control is not what kind of people your kids are, but you can control what kind of dad they had.
Yeah,
that's good.
Okay, I think I know what I'm saying. For people who are young parents nowadays, I think what I would say is like, I feel like we may be unaware of the fact that our generation's parenting style is ending up in the opposite ditch of maybe previous generations that we sometimes feel very free to critique.
Okay. How so?
I feel like some of like the typical critiques you hear about like previous generations' parents is like their lack of emotional intelligence and their lack of awareness, and they weren't home enough, and they weren't this and that. I feel like my generation, perhaps rightly, is seeing that there were certain things that were happening there that were unhealthy. But now we are swinging to another side of the ditch where I feel like we're so afraid that we're going to mess up our kids that we can tend to be maybe either passive or, like you're saying, overly like controlling. Right. And so I would just say, like, there's probably some good stuff that could be picked up in some of like the, you know, books that people are reading nowadays, but don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like, you know, there's wisdom in previous generations and how they parented. And I would encourage people my age who are parenting, you know, don't just do a strong overreaction, overcorrection from like the stuff you don't like about how your mom and dad or your grandparents did it. Like, you know, take responsibility for your life as a parent for sure. Like, figure out what you feel like is going to work for you. But also, like, there's tons of wisdom in the previous generations. I would honestly say that one of the biggest reasons Sarah and I are doing so great right now is because we're doing our best to actually talk to both sets of parents.
That's great.
And welcome their wisdom. Are we doing every single thing that our parents are telling us or recommending to us? No. But I will say it sure does feel like we're starting like we're starting in a healthier place because we've been able to kind of welcome that. Now, I know that everybody's situation is different, and not everybody had good parents. So I understand, you know, it's my own lived experience. But in general, though, I still think there are trends that we can kind of look to and be aware of.
If you had relatively like healthy parents, like maybe like they stayed married, they're Christians, that kind of thing, and like you had an overall decent experience, like you're wise to give them the benefit of the doubt that there's probably a reason they did things that way, you know. And I've come to this stage in my life where I now refuse to judge, you know, my parents for the stage that they're in until I get there.
Totally.
Right.
Because it's like Kelly and I often will say, like, we're 24 and change years in to married life. So, you know, far from we need a plaque, but we've been at it for a while, and marriage has been fun and not that hard, frankly. Which some people get mad when you say that, but
I get what you're saying.
But but we will be the first to acknowledge this. Both of our parents, like both sets of parents, have very healthy marriages, and so you tend to just default to what you grew up around. Yeah. And we are not so great at marriage so much as we had such great examples that our default settings generally work. Yeah. And I've seen other people who struggle, and it's not like they're not bad people. They don't have their default settings are more dysfunctional.
Yeah,
right. But fun fact, and then we'll throw it over to you, Brent. We've used that expression, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which is great literal and metaphorical parenting advice. But you talk about the way parenting roles, people react, or how different, you know, one generation wants to parent the opposite of the generation before. That term, throw the baby out with the bathwater, actually comes from, historically, a family would take one bath a week.
Yeah, the baby got the gross one.
Right, and the baby went so dad would bathe, then mom would bathe in the same, and they would just go down through the generations. And the baby was the last one to get washed in the dirtiest water. So literally, when you went to throw the bathwater out, you may not be able to see the baby.
Yeah,
which is the thought. Like if you, let's say the power went out at Chateau Spencer, you know, like who gets washed first in that scenario?
Right?
The baby, right?
Of course.
And dad, that's funny. The hero goes last, right?
Yeah.
Well, some things do need to adjust, and because I could even.
Yeah, I'm pro washing the baby first. I'm just saying things change.
I think it's super wise what you're saying though. Like, and it's you're smart to be like assuming that your parents might know something that you don't. But also, you're gonna have to delve into areas that they just didn't because of just the way life is now and stuff. And you know, like I grew up in a time that was a little more black and white. But even as I look back on my childhood, maybe there's some things I wish maybe my dad showed me or brought me into in some of the gray areas.
Right.
You know, and so for me, one of the things I'm learning right now is like, I'm just trying to edge in with my teenage kids into some of the gray stuff. And like, I want to be the first one to talk to them about sex. I want to be the first one. Like, I want to get to that stuff before the world does.
Yeah.
And I feel like right now we're in that season where my kids are, you know, they're teenagers, they're in the world. And it's like, okay, I can show them about alcohol, or the college campus can, or the high school party can. So like, I can talk to them about how do Christians deal with substances and food and sex and relationships and all that. And so I'm really feeling you know, this is an important time anyway. Again, I won't put their whole redemption and character on my shoulders, but I got to be a good dad. And for me,
that's the kind of dad you can be.
That's what I feel like. I want to edge into that. And, you know, it's interesting though, as a pastor and a dad, because they see the platform version of me. Yeah. They also see the behind the scenes version of me, which you're getting to see a little bit now anyway. So at least we're bursting the bubble for everybody, but it's an interesting dynamic and a stage, but I'm loving it that we're at. So
talk to me about this real quick, Spencer. I know we're just about out of time. One of the things I said to my dad once that I don't think he fully understood, because he wasn't a pastor's kid, but I was. And I am my kids are pastor's kids, and I'm a pastor's kid. Same with you. The idea that when your dad is a pastor, you don't actually have a pastor. Was that your experience? I should say more clearly, when your dad is a pastor, your dad is not your pastor.
Yeah. I feel like I've never even heard that expression before.
Well, I'm not saying it's
I don't know.
I made it up. That's original AJ Thomas.
Yeah.
No, I guess that idea of like, you can't. Your dad is never. You can't. Like my church was. I went to a church that had a pastor.
Right.
But it's never. I could never go. I need to talk to my pastor. I'm going to make an appointment with dad.
Yeah, I mean,
he's gonna be my dad in that, and I wanted him to be, right?
You'd rather have a dad than a pastor, anyway.
Right? Much rather. And somebody else,
or a good dad, anyway.
Someone else in theory can be my pastor.
I'll take a good dad over a good pastor all day. Every day.
I mean, really, a good
need both.
A good pastor is ultimately sort of a discount dad.
Yeah. Did you like being a PK?
Loved it.
Yeah, me too. Like, I feel like the stereotypes about PKs never did resonate with me.
You never moved.
No,
I didn't either. I wonder if that's part of it.
I bet. You know what? I bet you're right.
Yeah.
Like, we never had the whole upheaval, the new church, and also because I grew up in. I don't know about you, but because I grew up in the same church too. There was zero like, oh, you're the pastor's kid. Like, if I was getting in trouble, I was getting in trouble with, you know, like whatever board member might have been mad that the pastor's kid did that.
His kid was involved.
His kid was involved too, and
yeah.
All right,
here we go.
Let's go. Let's wrap it up. Let's get into Mountainous Top 4. We changed it. It's no longer Mount Rushmore. We are in a trade war, and so we are calling this Mountainous Top 4.
Mountainous
today,
Top 4.
as we close, that's a way throwback before your time.
Deep cut.
Top 4 fictional villains. To close, top 4 fictional villains. Can be book, can be
they just
movie.
have to not be real.
Yeah, just not real villains. Top 4. You ready?
Yeah.
Go.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
All right. I gotta do a couple of honorable mentions real quick. Well, no, I'll save those in case there's someone else's first one, so I don't steal their thunder. But I reserve the right to come back and throw in a couple of honorable mentions at the end.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Ben Linus from Lost.
Amazing.
That's
great.
Fantastic villain.
You really hate him when
he's the villain version of the anti-hero. Like there are moments, because he's such a weedy little guy, where you almost are like pulling for him, but then you're like, no, this guy is the worst.
This guy needs to die.
It's like the opposite of the hero who's like the hero, but you're like, man, but sometimes they can be a real jerk. Like he's sort of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Boyd Crowder from the TV show Justified.
Okay.
He was Walton Goggins is the actor who plays him, and that guy's just awesome. He's like one of those. He's terrible, but at the same time, he's just like he's such a character. You just enjoy him. Kilgrave from Jessica Jones.
Oh yeah, he had like the telepathy.
Yeah. He played by
British guy.
Yeah, that dude who played Doctor Who for a while. And then I'm gonna in loyalty to my childhood, I'm going with Cobra Commander.
Oh yeah, it's a GI Joe reference.
Cobra Commander.
I don't know hardly any of those references except for the lost one.
Bring it home for the kids. What do you got?
Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Okay. Classic.
Joker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plankton.
Plankton.
From SpongeBob. Come on.
Yeah, no,
Come on.
See, you just missed us.
That's pre-me.
Plankton. He's
Plankton,
the
okay.
best.
He's the bad
And,
guy in
let's
SpongeBob?
see. My generation is going to remember this one. Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
Oh yeah.
What's
Come
that
on
from?
with Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
Phineas and Ferb.
Phineas and
A
Ferb.
good old...
Theme song sung by one of my favorite bands, Bowling for Soup.
All right.
Can I just say real quick,
Honorable
though?
mention?
I think one of the lamest heroes is Kylo Ren.
Villains.
Oh yeah,
Or villains. Yeah.
Yeah, he's terrible.
Kylo
Well,
Ren.
this one's tough.
No
though.
intimidation at all.
Yeah, this one's tough though too because a lot of the best stories have a villain that ends up like it's got a softer side or whatever. Yeah. So it is a little bit challenging. I did have honorable mention of Vader and Joker. Those are both fantastic.
Cool. Particularly Ledger's Joker.
That there is no other.
No. I would if I was the greatest actor of all time, I would still refuse a role as Joker for that very reason.
So yeah, don't touch it. So I'm going with Gollum.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Just like again, it's complicated though because you are kind of rooting for him a little bit. You're like, oh, maybe he's gonna Smeagol's coming back, but
anti-villain.
In the end, like he could, the ring owned him. Yeah. So he's a great character. Agent Smith.
Oh,
from
Matrix.
The Matrix.
I've never seen The Matrix.
Oh, Spencer Conway. My goodness, boy.
I've heard about it.
You have some homework.
Everything I just said about hope for this generation just went out the window.
The next time you're on the back corner, you have got to watch it and then come back.
We're gonna do a reaction video, which is just 2 hours of us watching The Matrix.
No, us watching him watch The Matrix. Agent Smith, Hannibal Lecter.
Great one.
Very nuanced, interesting
he was a good villain.
And then James Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes.
I appreciate how much thought you guys put into these.
Particularly the BBC Sherlock Holmes. That actor is incredible. I don't know what his name is.
With Eggs Benedict cucumber bun there.
Yeah, with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, that's who I said.
As Sherlock Holmes. And this guy who plays Moriarty is phenomenal.
That's awesome.
So
wait. So I get 2 honorable mentions.
Okay, get them.
One I actually thought you were going to get, which I didn't want to say, would be Sauron himself.
Yeah, I thought Sauron, but I went Gollum.
He's
for
not
the Lord
as
of the Rings.
interesting a villain, but he's pretty villainous.
And he likes to do arts and crafts.
And then my other super throwback, Gargamel.
Ooh, wow.
I'm just like, huh?
That's
from the Smurfs.
That's Smurfs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's from our
almost
childhood.
goes back too far for me.
Yeah, that's our SpongeBob.
Yeah. That's our Plankton.
And on that note, we dance.
We dance.
If you ask any girl from the parish around what pleases her most from her head to her toes, she'll say, I'm not sure that it's business of yours, but I do like to waltz with a log driver, for he goes burning down and down.